Good morning, listeners to the Spiritual Underground Podcast. This is Dan once again coming to you from the wood shop at DTM Enterprises, my little wood shop in the backyard, where we've been bringing you most of these podcasts. Really quickly, want to tell you to go to, I'll add this in too, because what the heck. Go to dtmww.net. That's my website for the woodworking. If you got anything that direction that I can help you with, woodworking, refinishing pieces, you can see some of the work that I do on there. Spiritualunderground.org is where the show notes and the pictures of the guests and things like that. There's also a contact me page on there. Darren Frank's music is wrapped around the podcast. I've actually had a couple friends too in recovery offering up some music too, so I think I'm going to be getting some new stuff to branch out with and add a little different flavor here and there. And last but not least, right in front of me is a copy of 12-Step Spiritual Recovery by James Christopher Cone, and you can get that on Amazon, and you can get a hard copy mailed to your home, or you can buy that in a Kindle version also. And speaking of that, the author of that very book is sitting right across the table from me, my sponsor, Christopher. He's going to take some time today. We're going to have some fun telling his story. The man has just completely, he's changed. I'll just changed my life. Now, one of the things that's cool is that, it's changed my life in a way that I could never have imagined. You know, I walked in and bumped into you, and it was just like I don't know, sometimes in the movie, like in the movies when something just when they swirl out from like one thing to another, somebody will bump into something revolutionary, and it's like a big swirl, and they're all of a sudden in a different land. That's the way I look back at the night that when you started sponsoring me, that all of a sudden I did like 8 360-degree turns, like clipped my heels together, and was in a different world from that point forward. So, and the other thing is he touches a lot of other people too. You know, I feel, let's say a couple other things before we move on to the actual podcast. One of the things that was always touched me was that, you know, even though I know that you help a lot of different people and you sponsor quite a few people, and of course in your work you do it, and we do a thing. A lot of times somebody will on your sobriety birthday, somebody will say, anybody here who has either been directly sponsored by a sponsor, or has otherwise been affected by your work, raise your hand. And there's pretty much very few people in any of those rooms that are not raising their hands. But the thing that always touched me is that I always felt like you made me feel like I was your only sponsee. You know, that I was the only one, you know, and that was just really touched me, even though, and for a while I knew that you had some others, but man, you just had that touch of that personal feeling that when you're focused on somebody, you are focused on that person, like laser beam focus. That's the way I felt like when you were working with me. The rest of the world was gone, and it was me and you sitting down working. The other thing that amazes me, and it still does, is that this whole thing, we really take seriously this our own conception of a higher power, right? And somehow or another, you developed a conception of a higher power in me, or helped me develop mine, without ever really letting me in on yours. You know, so I never had that like, hey, he's trying to sell me something, or, you know, there was never an air of some kind of underlying motive there. It was so clean in that regard, you know. And I really can say this like right now, I hear you. We pray before we start these podcasts, and I hear you pray, and I still, you know, somebody would say so. Now and again, somebody will say, "So what's up with Christopher's higher power?" I really don't know. You'd have to ask him. I get a lot of questions about you. People seem to think like that they should come to me about what.
How do I have my hair so sweet and neat all the time?
Right. What hair products does he use? You will have to talk to him. So welcome to the podcast once again. You interviewed the last weekend, and I get to turn around and interview you this weekend.
I'm like on fire with juice. I think I'm levitating in my chair right now from all that praise. Thank you. I don't feel deserving, but it's certainly warm and fuzzy, and this is what we do in recovery. We support each other, and so you have been a blessing in my life, and I know for a fact that the creation of this book and us trying to help the rest of the world, you are an integral angel in that whole process, and the integral angel, because I called you every day and bitched about the process. So thank you for being in my life.
Well, it is like I said, we think it's I'm sure there's some kind of divine thing going on that put us together. It's just it's the epitome of the right teacher and right student at the right time.
It's always the divine thing working in our life, in my opinion.
Right, yeah.
And if anybody wants to know what my higher power is, it's just love. You know, I have a sponsor who has less time than me, but the reason why I chose him was because he himself had a very simple idea of a higher power. And it's what, excuse me, it's what we're all searching for. It's what we had as children and what we're searching for as adults, is that feeling of being loved and cared for. So he if you ask my sponsor what his idea of a higher power is, he'll say anything that makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside, like when I was a child and my mother would take me up in her arms and she would rock me and sing me to sleep and rub my back. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Every other complication man has put on it with our dogma and doctrines and bullshit will not help you get to that feeling. And that's what we're all seeking, whether we're seeking it through drugs or whether we're seeking it through food, sex, you name it. We're all seeking that warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
And the problem with those other avenues of seeking warm and fuzzy is they don't last, right? You know, you get that hit and then they fade, and then you got to keep chasing it. And it's a nightmare.
Or that's the after effect.
Something I do in my life, and it happened this morning, and I didn't know it was going to happen. That was kind of neat because I'm always looking for something to start off with. And I sort of let it happen, right? I let higher power sort of guide me on that. And the other night at the meeting, I had the lead, and I brought up the topic about our sobriety and spiritual path being assaulted at every turn by this spiritually sick world we live in, and especially since we live in the most sick country in the world. And I know, make America great again. No, folks, we are sick, and the rest of the world looks at us like, what's wrong? What is going on with you guys? Because it's, you know, if the deal is about love, we've strayed pretty damn far from that. And it's all just programming. They've programmed us into these labels, and we've separated, and we don't believe that we're each other's brother, and we're only one country. We sink or swim together, and it's all a game, and they're all playing us. But we'll talk about that stuff later. So I'm driving here, and I'm sitting here, and I ain't even thinking about the assault stuff. And I passed on any average street in America. Try this experiment. Just drive down the street and look at what's being thrown at you to fix you. So I was assaulted by saturated fat. I was assaulted by sugar. I was assaulted by scratch-off gambling lottery tickets. I was assaulted by liquor stores. I was assaulted by nicotine. You have a vaping place on the way here. And the only thing I did not see, which you will see on an average street in America today, is a CDB store trying to assault me and saying, I need this miracle drug to fix whatever's wrong in my life. And not only that, but you guys have a freaking Taco Bell across the street from a liquor store. Where was this when I was getting drunk?
Right.
I mean, and we don't even think about it. We're in this fishbowl thinking I'm in control with my little ego, and that's not influencing me. When in fact, we know from anthropologists and biologists that the human animal, if food is available, we used to be in a feast or famine mode when we were living in caves. So if food is available, your brain will zero right in on it. Yep. Just like you've talked about when you were working in your office, you're trying to eat your decent diet, and then somebody bring in a bunch of crap they made at home, and you must try it because they made it. We had that happen at work yesterday. And your brain will go, I need to do that because it's there. And if I don't get it now, I may starve to death.
Yeah.
So we're being thrown on this neon sign, flashing lights, try this, do this. And we just go along and think that's not influencing you. And so for we who are awake, which is the goal of the 12 steps, and trying to stay sober and work and walk a path of health, we're not perfect. We're very human, and we make a lot of mistakes. We do the same as any other human beings. We're not pushing ourselves in any level above that. But I will say, at least I'm awake. At least I was driving down the street and could see that today. How many people even see that?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, like when they set that food out, the free aspect of it also attracts you at a real base level, because it's no work involved for the meal, right?
Not only that, but we've evolved. If you fruit is very bright in nature, and that's because it's meant to catch your attention and eye, because it's quick sugar, it's quick fix. All the brightly colored foods are usually those ones that hit your system the fastest, and so we've evolved to look for those, and so that's why they use all the neon lights and the packaging and the boxes. The other thing I was going to talk about this morning was just what a great pleasure this is. Telling our story, to me, is one of the most sacred aspects of recovery. If Bill Wilson had not gone to tell his story to Dr. Bob and had come in his house saying, I'm here to sober you up, Dr. Bob had already made up his mind in his memoirs. He wrote this, that he was going to give this guy, this Yankee from New York, as he called him, 5 minutes. Just to please his wife. I'll give this Yankee 5 minutes, and then I'm kicking his lily white butt right out the door. That's how our movement started. And the reason why it worked is because Bill Wilson was panicking. He was going to drink, and he begged him to take him in and hear his story. And in Dr. Bob's memoirs, he says, man, this guy was shaking. He was pale. He was sweating. He obviously was in distress, and it triggered his doctor instincts. Like, you know, he said, I'd be a real heel if I threw this guy back out in the cold. And in other words, today's language, I'd be an asshole, and I'd be a dick to not help this guy. So when we go to tell our story, it's a very sacred thing. It's my truth, right? And I think what makes us nervous, because this morning I had a moment, I don't want to blame it on getting older, which is possible. I have moments every now and then. They're getting more frequent. But this one was just so in my face that I was like, hey, even though I'm not nervous to tell my story, I must be nervous to tell my story, which is normal.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there getting ready to go, and I'm looking at my pockets. I'm like, where's my damn car keys? What the hell? I'm searching. I'm like, I know I had them. I brought them home. I got out of my car, locked the car. I came upstairs. I laid them in the place. I know they're here, and I'm searching. I have my house keys. I don't have my car keys. And they're in my mouth. I'm hanging them from my teeth.
You got them in your teeth.
It put my teeth to pick up everything else, and I'm like, where are my car keys?
It's kind of like looking for your glasses when you're on your face.
Yes. Well, why is that significant? I think it's significant because for all of us, and here's my message for all of you out there in recovery today, and you may get a few of them, so buckle your seatbelt. We come from a history where telling our truth was dangerous. The vast majority of us came from screwed up, fucked up, alcoholic, drug addict households that if you told the truth, you got the shit kicked out of you. If not physically, at least emotionally. It was never honored. It was never believed in. And we didn't want to hear it, right? So we learned real quick, I'm going to shut that shit down. You talked about that last week. I'm not going to talk about that before after your teacher called you out, right? So when we do this, we are literally opening up our heart and guts, and laying them out in front of strangers, sometimes hundreds of people in the room, thousands at a big convention. And for some jerk off to come up and complain or make a comment about you telling your story, your truth, we're violating ourselves. And so the saying I always have for that, most of us remember the old Christmas special, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and he ends up on the island of misfit toys, and he's begging for a place to stay where they'll take him in, and they say, no, you can't stay here. And then and Cornelius says, Jesus Christ, even in front of misfits, you guys are misfits. And we do that to ourselves in the program. We do that to ourselves in recovery, and I think it's shameful. And I will call it out. It took me a long time to get my voice on this because it would just piss me off. I didn't know what it was, but now I understand thoroughly what it is. That dude just laid his heart out, guts and soul, and you haven't said shit. You're sitting back, arms crossed, ready to quote the big book, say some bullshit, not even from your head, all from your head, not from your gut, and you're going to lay into that dude. They do it to newcomers, right? Because he said one wrong thing. Yep. You're an idiot because what you're doing is making AA and recovery unsafe. And if we do that to each other, we get drunk. Yeah. We die the minute we lose the ability to tell our truth, which is what our meeting, our home group's all about. It's why we split from this other group we were in, because tell the story real quick, and then we got to get onto my history, I guess. There was a meeting one night where a newcomer opened up, really honestly, and this has happened several times before because that old men's group was filled with testosterone, but there was this one dude, and he's well respected in our community and actually has a high position in the city of Louisville, laid into this newcomer without laying into him, but saying things like, you know, you shouldn't say this, and the people who are new shouldn't talk. And I remember looking over at Darren, he was sitting directly across from me, and I was like, that's it. That's the final straw. I do not want to be a part of a group that's going to shut down somebody who's trying to get well. Yeah. And so that, to me, has always been the spirit of our group. We make mistakes. We're at each other's throats. We have home groups where people get upset. It just makes me laugh. I'm like, just don't be it's just a fucking home group. Be a participant. Show up. Try to show some concern for your own group. But we sink or swim together. Just like I said about our country. Within AA, truly, we sink or swim together. So take that to your next meeting, please. Talk to your home group about it.
Yeah, I really like the word a safe place because that's what we're looking for big time. It's someplace safe to be, man. It's just
our whole lives in this world. Do you think it's safe
like
out
running
there?
From cave to cave,
especially
to
after 2001, we got terrorists trying to kill us. Yeah. It's not safe out there.
Yeah, and it does kind of go back to that old times of when you did have to run from safe spot to safe spot or something ate you. Mm-hmm. Except for it's a different kind of eating today.
Very much so.
It's us eating one another more times than not these animals out there prowling around.
Raking somebody over the coals, man, in public, right? Yeah, and they're brand new. And I'm in a position where I'm running a guinea pig lab where I get to send out my little guinea pigs to meetings for the first time. And then they'll report back to me on the state of recovery because they're going to multiple meetings. I won't say one particular fellowship. And some of the things I hear are just like, wow, I went in there and they just slammed this guy for cursing, or they just slammed this other guy for bringing up that he was an addict. Didn't even talk about drugs, just said that he was an addict. Like, oh my God, I understand about the primary purpose, but Bill Wilson would be turning in his grave because he himself said intolerance of any kind is a thing that's going to destroy our fellowship.
Yeah.
Of any kind, any kind, any kind. I say that 3 times because he wrote it not only in the Big Book, but he wrote it in all of his Grapevine articles. He said that to the day he was died, that is the one thing that's going to kill our fellowship. So here I am this morning.
Yeah.
Rant over.
Yeah, we can.
You may get several of those.
Maybe we'll do that
today.
another
So,
time
like I said,
too.
buckle your seatbelt.
Yeah, we just need to sit down sometime too and just rant.
Yes.
And let all that flow because my head goes right into some more of that. But we do need to. Today we're sitting down
for a purpose.
For a purpose.
This isn't just one of our gab sessions.
Yeah. So you know how we start.
I think
we
I do.
Start with
done this before.
A person's sobriety date, and then we just go from there. And I think you've done this before a time or two. So
my name is Christopher, and I am an alcoholic and an addict and several other things. I'm just one of those guys that just doesn't feel right inside, and I'm always looking for something from the outside to fix it. That's our nature. It's the way we're built. God made us this way. Deal with it. My sobriety date is 5/11/1984, May 11th, 1984. For that, I can't even believe it. I was going to say eternally grateful, of course, what they always say, but true, but I'm just stunned myself. I can't even believe I made it. Certainly didn't look very promising at the beginning. So when I was thinking about my history, I'm like you. I think it's important to talk a lot about childhood and what formed us. The people neurologists, psychologists, psychiatrists, they all say that a majority of who we're going to be is formed by the age 2. It's depressing to think about that. Now, recovery is a game changer for that because you can change your path and who you are entirely from the inside out. But so I have come from some history in my family, on my mother's side especially. My grandfather on my father's side was with General Electric, and he came down from New York in the 1950s when everybody moved down to Louisville here. He was an executive, did very well for himself. But the sad thing is, as I was thinking about it, Dan, is I don't really know anything about my great-grandfather on that side. My father's family was all Irish Catholic, and they didn't really talk. So it's really sad to me that I really don't know anything. I don't know anything. I never heard him talk once about my great-grandfather. So I don't know if that's because he was one of us and it was not worth talking about, or it just wasn't talked about. And on my mother's side, my great-grandfather on that side ran a distillery called Waltham Distilleries. It was bought in the late 1800s. They made Old Grandad whiskey, which I looked up on Wikipedia last night, is actually still in the top 10 selling whiskeys in the world.
Is it?
Yeah. And he was co-owner, and then he bought the Louisville Colonels minor league baseball team, which had Pee Wee Reese on it and all that stuff. And my grandfather went to work for him managing the team. And often when I think about that, I think about this romanticized idea that my grandfather was touring the country with a minor league baseball team in the 1920s. Think about the stories he must have.
Yeah.
I do have some pictures somewhere when Babe Ruth came down to visit, and the manager from the New York Yankees visited the field. I think it was when they opened the baseball field that they used to have out there. And then my grandfather went from there to getting into horse racing and ended up being the president of Churchill Downs through the 1960s. And so I say that history because I think that started to influence me before I was even out of the womb. I was the firstborn male child, and you know how that is in families. They have a lot of expectations that this is going to be our future, our dreams,
Prince is born.
Yes, exactly. And one thing I do want to say about my great-grandfather that I didn't understand when I was young, but the older I get, the more I appreciate how deep this is. He, on his gravesite in Cave Hill, he was given it's pretty large. It's this bronze plaque on the ground by the citizens of Louisville for all of his things that he did for the city, his civic duties, for the community. They just got together and decided to do this monument for him. And yeah, after he was dead. And that just says a lot about what he left behind. But still, like I said, I don't really know that much about him, which makes me sad, even on my mom's side. So the problem with me being born into that situation, which is why I bring it up, is because I had absolutely zero interest in horse racing, zero interest in baseball. I know it's un-American, I'm sorry. And I couldn't drink, not yet. And when I did get into my cups, whiskey wasn't really my deal. So that was kind of the setup. I mean, it was a setup right from the beginning. Like, this is going to be our child, is going to carry forward our legacy, and we're not really into any of that. I was one of those odd ducks, and most of us are like that in our childhood. We're the misfit again, coming in and like, who's this guy? He doesn't quite fit into what our family is all about. When I was born, my family lived in Chicago because my father had gotten a job at Leo Burnett, which was the number 3 advertising agency in the country. I think it's number 2 now. It's very well known. He was on the teams that created the Tony the Tiger, the Marlboro Man, the Pillsbury Doughboy, Charlie the Talking Tuna Fish. All that stuff in the 60s was from that agency. And so my dad was in the thick of it. And I always like to say that growing up in the early years before my dad's disease took over, it really was like Bewitched, the television show. Darren Stevens coming home from work on the train with his little briefcase, honey, I'm home, and my mom would have the cocktails ready and come out like perfect with her hair perfect and blonde, and they would sit and have their cocktail hour. It was very 60s. That's what you did, right? Very cosmopolitan. My dad was always sharp dresser and took care of himself, and so we're born into that. I had an older sister, I have a younger brother, and we're born into this situation, and none of us knew that alcoholism was going to slowly destroy every single piece of that. My dad began drinking as the pressures of his job. He started drinking more. He was always a drinker, but he started drinking more. And to give you some background on my dad, which I think is significant, he went to Northwestern University, and it's not the university my grandfather wanted him to go to, apparently. And so my grandfather said to him, if you're not the president of your fraternity after your first year at this university, I'm not going to pay for any more of your college. And guess what my dad did? He became the president of his fraternity after his freshman year, which is kind of unheard of. Wow. And I think that kind of pressure, and he was an only child growing up in that family, I have a lot of sympathy for him today that I didn't have when I had my resentments until this program freed me of them, of his alcoholism, what it did to me. So we just started going through the standard things, as arguments and screaming matches, and my sister tells stories about sitting up at the top of the stairs, which I remember peering over the banisters, you just can stick down, kind of see what's going on. Not being able to sleep because it's so loud, and she would try to cover my ears while I was clutching my little stuffed animal, and it's sad to me to think about that child now who didn't understand what was happening. What is this evil demon that has entered our family system and is destroying this beautiful home and life we're supposed to have? From kindergarten, I was sent to Catholic elementary school, and I was there for the first 3 grades, through grade 3, and it was the 60s, and the nuns were very abusive. They were very strict and violent. Scared the shit out of you, to be honest with you. I always felt like they smelled like formaldehyde and mothballs. Think about that combination. Even though I was always down with the idea that Jesus was a beautiful idea, person, thing. Even as a child, the pictures of, you see Jesus with the light on him, sitting with small children and the animals, and he's just happy Jesus. I have no problem with that. And they proceeded to ruin that for me. Because they scared the shit out of me. They put fear into me. There's a song by Weezer or something that talks about that's where you learned fear, is going to the Catholic faith. And, you'd be in class, and all of a sudden you would hear these just horrific screams from the next class, and then it was a child being hit, and then being dragged down the hall by their ear to the principal's office for something probably stupid, that he crossed his legs the wrong way or something. I mean, it was literally like that. So I'm sitting there like, well, I learned real early, you start covering up your shit. And we have a saying in the program, like cats covering up their turds in a litter box. Like real soon I learned, don't let them see you. And the priests, my God, you would have thought they walked on water. You talk about women being oppressed. Anytime the priest was around, these nuns were just like, oh, the gods entered the room, so you better not even breathe. And we weren't allowed to talk to them, and unless they spoke to you. I mean, it might as well have been the Pope himself.
Yeah.
And for people who grew up in that age and went through that, you understand what I mean, and it's okay to say that nowadays. I'm not trying to bash anybody's faith. I'm telling my truth, which subsequently formed my fundamental ideas of God, that it wasn't safe. And if you say or do the wrong thing, you'll be hurt physically. That's a very powerful thing to grow up. When I get people in my group who say they didn't have any kind of religious upbringing, I'm almost jealous.
Yeah.
They were white slate about it. But for me, it was formed early, like, oh, boy, that's a scary deal, right?
Yeah.
Plus, they were telling me, I didn't directly tell them. Nobody talks in an alcoholic family, especially children. They're not going to share what's going on in school. The kid's falling asleep in school. He can't concentrate. His grades are failing, and they put him on ADD medicine, right? They don't bother to ask, oh, is your father a drunk? Is that you're up all night? Is that why you can't do it in school? But so totally lost my thought there.
I'm okay with that. We can have pauses and don't have to have just constant. So take your time and think about where you're
I think maybe what it was the rush of emotions coming over me.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I just felt a wave of real sadness and regret for that poor child and what he had to go through, and for any child that has their idea of God crushed.
Yeah. So
what I was going to add on to that is, I didn't tell him directly what was going on, but I would listen, and I was a smart kid. Well, most alcoholic kids are. We pay attention. And they were saying, Jesus will fix everything. Jesus will fix everything. Jesus will fix everything. So I started praying at a young age, what's wrong with my dad? Fix my dad. Save my dad. Help my dad. Do something. Show up, please. And it only got worse. And it only got worse. And it only got worse. So when I entered the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous and they threw that God thing at me, I had already had these earliest of experiences saying, that doesn't work.
I've tried that.
Capital exclamation point. And tried it over and over. So I had proven, like the experiment, pray, it doesn't work. Pray, it doesn't work. So my dad's disease continued to get worse, and we went through the typical, okay, now it's divorce time. And the reason why it was divorce time was my mom will tell in her story that she became very afraid that he was going to turn his fury towards us. Now, I had always been the brunt of his verbal abuse. Like, he picked on me relentlessly. And just to speak on alcoholic experiences in an alcoholic family, it's like the after-school special shit. Mom does something at the dinner table or doesn't get the dinner on the table in time or whatever. Dad doesn't like her or whatever. So my dad would take the trash can and just say, fuck y'all, and dump the whole trash can on the food and ruin dinner. And then we'd all be sitting there going, what the fuck just happened? Welcome to an alcoholic family system. That's what you deal with every day. It's just madness. And you're always keen to know what kind of mood dad is in, whether it's safe or not.
Got your radar
and then you just
on.
go hide, right? Go hide in your room or whatever and go do your thing in your little corner. So she was concerned that he was going to turn that fury towards us. And she was willing as a codependent to accept it for herself. But something in her said, I'm not going to let my children be beat. So she went to her church and she told them, help. I need help. This man is hurting the family. He's sick and he's going to hurt the kids. And you know what their response was? If you leave him, we will excommunicate you. At the one time when you need this thing the most, in your most desperate straits, and they turn their back on you and cast you out. So don't tell me that didn't form my ideas about God.
Yeah.
Man is, and I say in my book, and mankind has fucked up this idea of God, and everybody out there, even the ones that are preaching and crazy believers, they're fucked up. It's all man shit. So we had to move back to Louisville, and began the progression of smaller and smaller houses.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Because as my dad's disease got worse, he couldn't pay alimony. He couldn't pay his payments, the child payments. And more and more schools. Smaller and smaller houses, more and more schools. And I was thrown into the public school system from the Catholic schools. And I think I went to 7 different schools from grade 4 through grade 12. Wow. 7 different schools. And a lot of actors and comedians will talk about that kind of a story and how that was kind of like a survival skill, because you have to learn how to make new friends fast.
Yeah.
And, you know, and
a good way to do that.
Being the jokester was my way of doing it. I was always the comedian and cracking people up. That's how I got friends. Luckily, in 4th grade when I moved to Louisville, I found this friend named Nick, and he was my buddy, man. We became tighter than tight, man. We were best friends all through high school. And every weekend was like, I'm going to his house, he's going to my house. We didn't even worry about what everybody else was doing, right? We got our thing. And he was into all the crazy shit I was into, Monty Python and comic books and just James Bond and fun shit. And just that's what we grew up with. And but it was just hard. It was just hard to keep switching schools and watching my dad decline. And I never really got to see him. Once he left the family in the divorce, he tried to do the weekend visit whenever he was supposed to, maybe every 2 weeks, but it was usually on his terms what he wanted to do, and of course drinking was involved. And frankly, I grew up just with that smell. The smell of alcohol radiating from a human body, right? Even if they haven't been drinking for a few hours, that's very sickening to me. Yeah. But when it's on your breath, and you know, any adult child of an alcoholic will tell you the worst thing about, and this is odd to say, right? Because you would think the worst thing is being beaten and abused. No, I mean, from a lot I've talked to and what I've heard at meetings, worst thing is when your dad is so cold and indifferent and unavailable to you, but when he drinks, he suddenly wants to be your best friend, and he's hugging you and won't let you go, and he's breathing that fucking smell right down your gullet, and you're just like want to puke. It's sickening. I mean, it's like a fucking child abuser. It makes you feel fucking sick.
It's also artificial.
It makes you writhe inside as a child. You're just like, oh, this is gross, right?
Yeah.
So I got the preaching since I was a little kid. Don't do drugs, don't do drugs, don't do alcohol. Well, we definitely don't do drugs. My family was one of those bipolar families. Like, you can drink like a fucking fish, but if you do drugs, you're one of those people.
Yeah.
And I still get patients who are programmed like that today with that, I'm just an alcoholic, I don't do drugs. And I'm just sitting there going, what the fuck are you here for? You goddamn idiot. You're in a mental hospital. Wake up.
Yeah. Yep.
But our whole culture is like
just
that.
Drink.
Our whole culture is sick with that shit.
Yep.
It's not a drug, really. It's actually the most destructive drug. I was listening to Joe Rogan the other day when they were saying 50% of people who are murdered are drunk, and 50% of people who murdered somebody were drunk at the time they did it. So you're more likely to die drunk than almost any other way in America, car wreck or anything else.
Yeah, and not to take away from that opiate epidemic, but alcohol is killing way more people every day than any of the rest of the drugs and that kind of thing that we're doing. The statistic
we're taught as treatment providers is that you add up all the carnage caused by all the drugs, and alcohol way overwhelms the cost to our society and how many people it's killing. And yet when Dad's sitting over there with a bad liver and he's orange and he's fucking dying from his own fucking puke and bile and piss building up in his body, you know, that's different than a heroin addict who's feeding for his next needle. It's idiotic, man. I hate our country sometimes. Because if you grew up in any other place in the world, man, it might be the exact opposite, that alcohol was the evil drug, but you can do opium.
Right. Yep.
So it's all programming, folks.
Yeah. Another thing I heard, just because I like when you sit at this side of the table, I think I see you do it too when you were on the other, when we were doing it last week, is you hear like some patterns that I don't know, but like the pattern of instability of what you've described here is phenomenal. All the different schools, different homes, never knowing what dad is going to be. And that just like kept you in, and then also the deal with the schooling of never knowing, when the hammer's going to fall on you by which nun or whatever going to go, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you just like always are just like ready to, just like a box turtle, had to pull back into your shell at any second, and you're just watching about what is going to be the next thing that's going to need me to pull into my protective shell to keep this madness from getting in on me.
And I always call it a perfect storm for those of us who are doubly blessed of being an alcoholic and growing up in an alcoholic family. Because I'm already nervous as all get out and uncomfortable in my own skin. If you have this disease of alcoholism, it's a psychiatric disorder. It's mostly chemical based, imbalances in the brain, just like any other psychiatric disorder, bipolar, schizophrenia, whatever. And you have it since birth, and it's progressive, so it gets worse over time. But what our disease is all about, people that don't know, is being sober. When I'm sober, I just am different than other people. I react differently. I see things differently. I process it differently. I feel it differently. And then when I speak it differently, people look at me and go, what do you mean? I didn't feel that way. And I had that experience my whole life. And so what I learned real quick from that is don't talk.
Yeah.
I'm not going to share with you how I feel. And I just have these girlfriends who are like, talk to me, share how you feel, tell me what you really feel. And then when you do, their eyes start to widen, and they start pulling back, and you're like, well, I think I just lost that one. Time to find a new girlfriend. Don't tell the truth, right? Which again is so sacred about our story, is to lay it all out there.
Yeah.
So, I was always a nervous kid. I was always waiting for their shoe to drop, and just because of my own disease and from the disease of my family. And my mom decided to marry another alcoholic. And that was at age 11 or 12. And anybody that knows psychiatry will tell you that's one of the worst time periods for a child to lose their father and have a stepfather come in. It causes just holy hell havoc on their ideas of who to bond with as a male. And I grew up basically with the idea that all males were untrustworthy. I loved women, but males, nah. And I like that line from Fight Club. It always sticks out in my head where Brad Pitt's in the bathtub, and he goes, we're a generation raised by women. And then he goes on to say, I just begin to wonder if another woman is what we need. Woman is what we need in our life. And I kind of relate to that because, part of my recovery has been about learning that you can have deep relationships with males. And it's not gay, and it's not whatever bullshit we got to grow up with, You show one emotion as a child, and suddenly you're a fucking faggot, and you're gay. And that was back in the days. There ain't no political correctness in the 70s. They'll fucking call you a faggot, beat the shit out of you for any wrong move you do. So you learn real fast. Be tough, macho up, put your chest out. No, I'm not looking at your dick in the men's shower shit.
Yeah.
And we all go through this as men, but we don't talk about it. Every single male I've ever done a fist step with had the same shit in their background, some way, some form.
And the fact, I don't know, but one of the things that always got me was like, I didn't like to be touched by a man, period. I didn't like, anything more than a handshake.
Yeah.
Hugs or anything.
No, we didn't hug in our
sit
family.
by one another and you were too close, any place that was possible, you put a chair in between you and the guy next to you, an empty chair. You need some distance between you and another
Which
dude.
sets us up in life because then the only softness, the only avenue for compassion and intimacy you have is women. Yeah. And then we end up getting in fucked up relationships with women. So, backing up. So, we moved to a completely different part of town. It was the sticks, basically. So, I went from city mouse to country mouse. My stepfather was a landscaper, owned a business, and he had guns and liked to hunt and fish. And I'm sitting there going, not my scene. So we had nothing to talk about. And he didn't really like me either, to be honest with you, I don't think. I think he tried. God bless him. I can look back and see that now. But we were just at odds with each other all the time. And he did physically attack me a couple of times. I've got a scar on my back from when he dragged me down the stairs. And to this day, my mother denies that any of that happened. A true codependent cannot face the reality of their consequences any more than an alcoholic likes to hear what they've done, right? And I'll tell one story because this is probably the most impactful story. It makes me very sad to share. I've done my inventory and I can see where I instigated this. But I was also 14 or 15 at the time, and that's what teenagers do. So my stepfather wanted to dominate the television, and this is the day before cables and multiple televisions, right? And he wanted to watch some stupid show like Hee Haw or some country bullshit. And I might have wanted to watch Happy Days or something because that's what everybody's going to be talking about in school the next day. But we're going to watch what stepdad wants to watch, and he was already drunk. And you don't cross him, man. He gets violent. He gets violent fast. He doesn't know how to deal with his feelings. He just goes to his fists. But I just pushed it that night. I'd had enough. And so we're sitting there watching it. And instead of watching the TV, I'm just staring at him. I'm across the room and I'm just looking at him. And he starts rumbling, "Stop looking at me, boy. Quit looking at me, boy." And he starts rumbling, and I don't know why I pushed it. I just kept staring at him. I didn't show any facial expression. I just stare at him. Next thing I know, he bolts up, and I knew what that meant. He was coming to rip me apart. So I start running around. We were in this big rec room we had. It was gigantic. And I'm running around the pool table, and he picks up a pool cube. And I'm like, oh, hell no, it's on. I'm like bolting out of the room as fast as I can. I run out of the room. He runs out of the room behind me. My mom runs behind him. The other kids are running behind that. The dog and cat are running behind. And I'm running up to the safety of my room because I know if I can just get to that room, get that door locked, I might have a chance. I literally felt in fear for my life. I swear to you, that is what I felt. Adrenaline's pumping. I slam the door. Get it locked just at the moment he grabs the handle. I swear to God, it was right in a split second. And I start backing up. And he's banging that door. It's coming off the hinges. Open the door, boy. Open the door, boy. Well, what the fuck am I going to open the door? You're going to whip my ass, you dumbass. And so I'm like looking for an exit route, and I see the window. And I'm like, okay, well, if he comes in here, I got to go out that window. So I pull up to the window. I put one leg out the window onto the roof. Thank God. And it was down this little hallway, so I didn't see it. He knocked the entire door off the hinges and flat onto the ground like a movie.
Wow.
Completely off. And then he's coming. As soon as I heard that sound, I was out the door. So it's like January. Low 40s. Drizzly rain like today. Misty night. I've got shorts on, no shoes, and a T-shirt. And I get out on the roof, and he's at the window saying, come here, boy. I'm coming to get you, boy. And he was coming out on the roof on me. So I jump off the fucking roof, roll in the grass, get all wet, cold, and I start running. You talk about that in your story, running with your heels. I was running on my fucking toes for my life. And I ran into the fields. We lived on a 52-acre landscaping farm. And I didn't know where I was going. And I'm out in the cold, and I'm freezing. And I figured out, oh, well, he's got this truck shed. That's where all the workers meet every morning. And so I'm going to break in there. I broke the glass somehow. I don't even know how I did it. And there was a phone in there. And I waited a while because I was hoping he was going to fall asleep, which is what his pattern was. And I called home, and my mom answered. And I said, what the fuck? I'm out here freezing to death. What do I do? She goes, well, you're just going to have to stay out there. You started this. And until he falls asleep, you just got to stay out there. Yeah, 14 years old.
Whoa.
Thrown out of my own family. That hurt worse
than
the whole situation. I waited hours out there in the cold alone with nobody to help me. And I snuck up, went through the fields again, barefoot, got in the house, crept as quietly as possible in my room, hoping he wasn't going to come in and get me.
Yeah, because there's no
and
door
usually
anymore.
His pattern was by the morning he was sober, it was over, right? And my door's off the hinges, and I just propped it up. And if you grew up in an alcoholic family, you understand the next part of the story, which is the insanity. Nobody said a word about it the next day. Not one fucking word. And my door stayed off the hinges for the next 2 months till it was repaired. And for me to have privacy, I would have to prop it up to be able to change and do what I want to do. And nobody said a word, and I wasn't going to bring it up. I'm not looking for a beating. So when I tell these stories, and again, they're not as horrible, and that's the thing we do, we compare, right? Well, I'm not like somebody who was abused like this person, I didn't have that. But I had what I had, and these are formative things for you to not trust mankind or anybody.
Yeah, right.
And learn to be a loner, dude. I was such a loner, my last name's Cone, in high school. Somehow they figured it out. They used to call me the Lone Cone. Right? Except for a girlfriend, you ain't getting in. I mean, I was friendly to everybody. It was very important to me to be like a politician. Everybody loved me, but then nobody was going to get in, kind of deal.
Yeah.
All right, so the turning point for me, everybody has to find their fit, and sports wasn't my fit. I just couldn't understand getting physical with sweaty men. Now, if there was sports where I could play with women and get physical and jump the showers with them, hey, man, I'd have been down with that sport. But I just couldn't understand it. I didn't really have a father to explain it to me. I mean, my father's extent of sports was he threw the football at me one time and I might have dropped it. He goes, oh, that's enough of that. And he did the same thing to my sister. My sister tells this story when she was trying to learn how to ride a bike. And he's just alcoholic. He can't help it. He's impatient. He pushed her down the street one time and she fell off and he quit. He quit trying to teach her how to ride a bike. So I found a theater company in town, and it has a good reputation, pretty big reputation back in the day, and somehow I got in. And by being in there and going to classes, I started to develop, I'd always had an affinity for the movies. Obviously, that was my escape. Movies and television was my safe zone, because in those especially in the 70s before reality television. Nobody shit. Nobody farted. Nobody had problems. If they did, it was all resolved in 22.3 minutes with the commercials, and everything I was happy in the end. And so those were my real friends. And I'd always loved acting. I'd always loved the idea of I thought it was a noble profession. I used to grow up, especially later, watching Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, and I thought those people could change the world. If you really exhibited the human condition in such a way to move people, and they came out profoundly touched, I believe that could change the world. It would change people's hearts. And so somehow I got the role of Tybalt in Romeo and Juliet. And from a guy who could not find his fit, suddenly I'm like this badass Tybalt. He's the guy that causes all the shit, man. He's the guy that tries to kill Romeo, man. And I had to learn how to fence and all this other shit. And I was like 15 years old. My whole life changed at that moment where I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
I finally found what I'm supposed to do.
Found the fit.
And that was so successful that another fortuitous thing happened. 16 years old, they opened up the Youth Performing Arts High School for the first time in Louisville in 1978. And I got in. And I was one of the first people, first classes. We were the first official full class that graduated. The first class was like 3 people. And then we were the second year, so we were the first full class. And so during the day, we would go to this high school and take our regular classes. And then the rest of the day, we could go play. And that's what it is. We call it a play, right? It's play. It's fun.
Right.
And, man, I found my fit. I was BMOC, big man on campus, man. I was like getting all the leads, getting all the women, just enjoying my new status as like, you know, I found my fit, so I was happy, and I could be friendly, and I was joking, and everybody loved me. The secretary loved me. The principal loved me. I could get in trouble, and he'd come in, he'd just pat me on the ass and say, "Oh, you're cool. Don't do it again." And everybody else would get in trouble. And I got the idea that I wanted to continue to do this. This was going to be my calling in life. I felt that strongly from the beginning that that's what I was supposed to do. And so I started checking out colleges. And up till this point, I hadn't used any drugs or alcohol. And again, it's that constant message from my family, don't be like your dad. And I got that strong. Every woman, my grandmother, sister, my mom, don't be like your dad, don't be like your dad, don't be like your dad. And so eventually that programming takes hold. Plus, I just hated that smell. And I couldn't see smoking pot. I saw people that did it, and I was like, it just makes you stupid. But I needed that approval. I needed to be the cool dude. I needed to be the guy that was accepted, even among druggies. I was accepted in every group. I didn't really have a group. And so I would do the craziest shit you could do without killing yourself at parties just to get people to say, "Man, what are you on? You're fucking crazy, dude. I can't believe you did that." And a lot of stuff I did was in cars. And I just don't even know how I'm still alive today. I've taken my life in my own hands more times in vehicles than I'd like to think of. I think I thought I was a speed racer or some shit. But I would do this stuff and show off to try and get my approval. I still had that need to fit in deeply. And if they would say to me, "Man, you're just so fucked up. What'd you do?" And I said, "Dude, I don't do anything. I'm just cool like that." That was my good feeling. That I could be as fucked up and even crazier and get their respect that I did something crazier than they would do high.
Yeah. I remember some people like that now that you say that. Some of my friends that
I had to
use, but
I
they
had to
were
be the top of the heap
than we were, and we weren't doing, we were drunk and high and everything else, and these dudes were sober and almost like ramping it up to our fever pitch, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So they kept up with it, but they just never fell in. For whatever reason, the substances didn't grab them.
Plus, I felt proud to say that I didn't have to be on something to do something nuts.
Yeah,
and live outside the lines, right? A lot of people will tell their story that using gave them the permission to live outside the lines. So my stepfather's nursery actually turned into a good thing because when I hit those years with our 2.5-acre lake, I became the party dude. And I would have a party almost every other weekend where everybody was talking about all week, "Oh, we're going to Christopher's house, it's going to be a great party." And I was like, if you want to bring your shit, just keep it to yourself. It's going to be a sober party, but it's not a sober party. You can bring your beer, you can bring your dope, but just do it in the woods. Go off, do your thing. And everybody was cool with that. And, we had a big old log in the lake for log rolling and stuff, and loud rock music. And, man, let me tell you, kids, something these days. Growing up in the 70s and going to concerts with all the icons and musical geniuses that have formed the entire road of what rock and roll is today was a very blessed time to live in. I miss it. I mean, I have a poster from the Doobie Brothers that was signed by all of them, and their ticket prices were $8.50 and $7.50. Yeah. And it was festival seating, so the sooner you got there, you got up front, and I would make a point to always be in that front row, man, right on top of it. I loved music.
Get there early.
So I got the idea that I want to pursue this, and I need to go to a good college. I went up to Carnegie Mellon in Pennsylvania and got in. And that was a good 4-year university where they would teach you your liberal arts, but then you also was major in acting. But I was like, no, dude, acting's my only thing. That's all I'm going to do. And I kind of have some regrets about that because I could have finished my degree there and also done my thing. But I had to be in New York. I mean, I wanted to do film, but I knew that the real good actors, they all started in New York, Marlon Brando, all those guys, and they learned their craft, and then you go into film. And we looked at Juilliard, which is the top acting school in the country, but I knew from walking in there that this was not going to be my cup of tea. It was too austere and strict and felt very scary to me. I was like, I'm not going to do this. But there is this school called Purchase, State University of New York, upstate New York, Westchester County, Purchase College. And they had this policy where they screen all these people to come in and they accept only 30 for their class. And at the end of their first year, they cut 10 people. So there's only going to be 20. So they had 1,000 applicants, and we had to go through a double audition process. I went up to New York and auditioned at the school just for the dean, and that was kind of a funny story. If you've seen the movie The Paper Chase with John Houseman, that's the way this dean was. He was a no-nonsense, glasses down, perched down on the end of his nose. And I came out doing some scene from Moliere where I was bouncing off the fucking walls, hyperactive, just I don't even know what I was doing, trying to make my impression, make him laugh. And out of nowhere, I hear this voice go, "Stop! Come here!" I'm like, is that good? I walk off the stage. I come sit down. Sit down! Stop trying to act. Just do it. He was that kind of a guy. And apparently I got in. I don't know how I got in. And then we had this second process where we auditioned on a theater off Broadway. And that was kind of a cool story. We're all sitting there panicking. It was the men on one day and the women on another day. We weren't mixed. And we had to go in and do like a song. We had to do some movement. We had to do gymnastics. We had to show we could do these talents. We had to do a scene and do a monologue. And it was very involved. We were there all day. Towards the end of the day, we were like wore out. They had wore our asses out. It was like active boot camp to try to get in this joint. And we hear this voice. We're all leaning around, looking at the floor, half dead. And we hear this voice go, "What the fuck happened to you guys?" And we look up, and it's fucking Paul Newman. And he just happened to be in the theater because he was doing a show next door or something. And we're like, "Oh, we're trying to get." He says, "Oh, okay." And he walked. And that's the kind of shit, man. It's magic. That's why I loved the whole scene. You tell anybody that, and they light up because in our country, celebrities are the royalties, right? Yeah, right. And it's the magic. It's the thing that's different than normal life. And real cool about how we got in. I mean, this, to me, I've never gotten higher on any drug. This was the highest moment of my life. I can honestly say this. At the end of the whole day, they said, it brought us all in. We all just stand there. And they said, all right, so, and I think there's about 50 of us in the room. And so we were the ones that had made it through the other process. And now they're going to whittle us down to 15. And they said, we've seen enough from blah, blah, blah. And they read the names off. You guys are good. Go on home. We still need to see more from blah, 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 blah. So we're thinking we're the second string. We're like, oh, Jesus Christ, I don't even have anything left in the tank to give. I don't even know what more they want from me. I can pull my pants down and show them that, but I really don't know what else I can do. And they let the guys leave, get out, and then they looked at us and they go, "You guys are the class of 1984. Welcome, you're in." And we're like, It was like instant panic. We all started jumping at each other and beating each other. I mean, suddenly we're like the best friends ever, and we've been through hell together, and we've made it. And I'm like, I got to tell my mom. And she's at like the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, which is like blocks away. And I'm in Times Square, and I'm like, I'm on fire. I can't wait to run and tell her I got in. And I start running. And I didn't run. I flew. I flew to that hotel. And I'm banging on the door like, I got it. And she's like, who is it? She's like, some buggers trying to break in her New York hotel. And I have never been higher than that moment in my whole life. I can honestly say that. That's how I know why I love that whole scene. Yeah. So I got in, and... what
was her reaction?
Oh, my God. We had a great time. Man, I'm so fortunate. I was able to be in New York and participate in things that you cannot participate in today unless you're part of the 1% in this country. I had lunch at Club 21. That's in the scene Wall Street when he goes to meet with Michael Douglas, and Michael Douglas says, "Here's some money, try, see what you do." You cannot get in there unless you're like the dude nowadays. We stayed at all the finest places and did all the things you do and shows, and we had a great time. The rest of the vacation was gravy up there. The rest of the days we were up there. So the pressure was on. We were up at 6. We didn't go to bed till late. And you got to learn everything. We had circus arts. We had separate classes for speech and voice and diction and like dialects. And it was like involved. And did not know it at the time, but come to find out later, because I didn't know he wasn't anybody to me. He was just another classmate. There was 30 of us. One of my classmates was Wesley Snipes. And it's funny when I look back, I have several friends who made it all the way. Some of them are bit players that you see in a billion movies, but you know who they are. And then some of them become, bigger than that. But of all the people I've known throughout all my history of being involved in acting schools and trainings and everything, it's how very, very few make it.
Right.
But the pressure's on us because we know we're at each other's throat, and that's by design. They're going to have us playing against each other that only 20 are going to be here next year.
Yeah.
So 10 of you are gone. So you're constantly sizing each other up. And, for me, I got myself from a small fish into a big pond, and it was not maybe the best of moves. Everybody there had already been on television, done movies. Some of them, one girl was from Sweden, and she'd done some international shit like modeling and stuff. So these are like people, and they're like, "Well, what'd you do?" And I'm like, "I've been in some plays at my high school." Plus, being from Kentucky, I had to endure that. "Oh, you guys wear shoes down there?" Right. And I'm like, "Yeah, we got this thing too with a string and a cord. It's called a phone. I can't believe it works. What?" And this was the 80s, right? It's a little bit backwards time compared to today. But, I loved it. But at the same time, it was wearing me out. And I was faltering, and I knew I was faltering. And I was falling back on old habits. We all have been fixing ourselves since birth if you've had this disease. And when you do your inventory, you really see what you used. And for me, the first drug I used was food and sugar. I learned as an early kid, sugar's crack, makes you feel better. Yeah. What do we do when a kid has an owie? We give him a lollipop. And it just makes him feel better. And so I would even hustle food, steal food, get that extra dessert, eat my vegetables but not eat them. I'd throw them behind the dryer and say I did so I get my dessert. So I started resorting to that, and of course, when I turned puberty, the sex was my greatest drug. That's really how I got through high school without doing dope, I think, was sex. I loved women, and when Brian Ferry from Roxy Music sings "Love is the drug that I'm thinking of," he's absolutely fucking correct. There's no better drug than infatuation and sex and love with somebody new, right? You might know something about that right now, actually. But I could feel it, like doors were closing in on me. And I was also having a lot of thoughts of, I remember calling my professor one night. And if this means anybody who's in the acting profession, my acting professor was the protege of Lee Strasberg from the Actors Studio. And the Actors Studio taught the Stanislavski method from Russia, and they were the ones that created Marlon Brando and all that whole generation of reality actors, whereas before it was all staged kind of acting, and then they brought that realism into theater and film. And so he wrote the book called The Actors Studio. He was Lee Strasberg's right-hand man, and he was this very severe New York Hasidic Jew, and he would just look at you with his little thin glasses, and he was, you didn't know if he liked you or if he was always thinking, and plus we're under that pressure, we're going to get kicked out. And I remember calling him one night that I felt like I was struggling, I didn't know what to do, and it was a bad move. It probably put the thought in his head like, well, this guy's unstable, right? We actually had one guy go unstable on us and disappear.
Really?
Yeah, now he was heavy into drugs and shit, but poor Bob, man, he disappeared for months. We didn't know what happened to him. Even his parents didn't know what happened. He just went off the grid. Huh. And from that pressure of the whole fucking school and everything.
I would imagine it.
So one night, we lived in my dormitory. We would share a common room, and then there was 3 bedrooms off to the side. And I'm sitting there, and I'm sweating, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't know I had the flu coming on, in addition to all this anxiety I have. And this is November time frame. Even after just being there since late August, I'm already losing my shit. And I can't go to sleep, and I'm tossing and turning, and the guys are out in the main room like they are every night, listening to Sex Pistols and The Clash and doing major ass narcotics and drugs. And, you know, we were always the straight ones, and they were always the heads, and they would make fun of us, and we would make fun of them. And never a thought of using in my entire life. Never one thought of using drugs or alcohol in my entire life. And out of nowhere, at 2 a.m, I get up out of my bed. I walk out in that room. I look at all of them, and they look up at me like they're expecting me to bitch about the music like we have done for the past 2 months so we can get some fucking sleep. And I go, I want to get high. They fell out, man. There was entire panic in the room. Like, what? At first, they didn't believe me.
No,
they quit. Yeah, you fucking no. You want to do? No, dude, you want to do? Don't want to do this. So they made it their mission to get me as fucked up on weed as they possibly could. And the guy goes up who he apparently was dealing, and he had this Sensimilia, and he had this big old bong. And so if you're a pot smoker in the day, you probably don't want to start with a bong and Sensimilia. Yeah. But here we go, folks. The moment that changes everything for us. So they gave me these 3 major hits, and they were like forcing me, like fist-wise, to not cough them up. They're like hitting me, saying, don't you fucking hold that shit. And I wanted to prove it so bad. My lungs are burning on fire. I wasn't going to let that out because I wanted to join that group all of a sudden.
Begin.
I mean, I hated those guys up till then, and suddenly I want to be a part of their scene, right? And I felt, not to trigger anybody out there, but I'm going to tell you something, man. Something stirred at the very tip of my buttocks and down at the lowest piece of my spine. Something stirred down there. And I'm sitting there going, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Nothing happened. I was just a typical nerdish user, like, come on, man, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And I'm like, dude.
I'm not feeling anything.
Relax, dude. Relax. And this thing, this slow, warm, it felt like a warm 3-inch, 4-inch pole, metal pole was being inserted up my ass. And it went up my spine. And it just started this warm enveloping up to my neck. And then I turned my head. And as I turned my head, the whole room held a second. And then turned a second later, like, whoop, like that. And it was on. I was like, okay. I was there. And the relief I got that night, not only from what I was feeling that day, but what I had been carrying for 18 years. I tell people in my story that I felt like I had taken a breath for the first time in my life. I felt like I had been holding my breath, on edge, reserved, always trying to make sure everybody's okay with me. Do you like me? Let me fit in. I'm cool. Am I cool? Am I cool? And suddenly it was like, fuck it. Yeah, my whole body relaxed, man.
This is what I've been looking for right here.
I belong. People don't understand how motivating and powerful and potent that is. I belong. And they thought I was the coolest fucking shit. Man, they took out Don Quixote. Somebody had that novel. And they start fucking, I don't even know how they even knew it, but they found the right passage. And this guy takes this mirror, and he's holding it in my head. It was a little handheld mirror, but it was a big one. And he's like holding my face. And they're reading like, look, Don Quixote, look in the mirror. Look at the person you've become. And the guy's like shaking it and turning it upside down and shit. And I was frying, man. I was like, whoa. My brain was melting out of my head, dude. And I didn't know at the time, but as I look back, I think my brain thought it had found God. And I know my whole life I'd been searching for something. And the people that went to church, they would tell me they felt that way. I went to church, I feel so good. I feel warm and fuzzy. I feel this great feeling. And I would sit there and I'm like, I feel scared. Yeah. And these benches are sore. And I have to go to the bathroom and I'm also bored. Get me the fuck out of here. That's all I ever felt. They say the same shit every week. In that faith. Yep. You get up and down. You know when to kneel. You know when to stand. I could go there today. And I'd know exactly how I'm supposed to participate and shake the other person's hand at this point in the service. It's the same exact fucking thing every time. So this feeling, though, was like, it's on. And I changed overnight. I was a light bulb alcoholic, just like Bill Wilson when he tried wine in Italy. And I used to feel weird about that until I started listening around. And a lot of people had that experience. My gene was strong. Minute I had it. Now, of course, the next day I told you I thought I had the flu coming on, and I did. And I actually got sick for 3 freaking days, couldn't get off the couch. Oh, yeah. And I was so naive about drugs, I believe the drugs had something to do with it. That they had slipped me something, yeah. And so, but funny enough, even though with that bad experience, 2 weeks later, I would say I was seeking somebody else who had it, and I started to change all my friends. If you could hook me up then suddenly we were best friends, and I lost all my old friends that were nerdish and didn't do all that.
Yeah, I can relate to that big time.
Plus, on campus in New York,
transition
you could
from
drink
one-
at 18. And so suddenly I felt like a buffet bell somewhere had gone ding, 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 and I just started trying everything. I mean, liquor now. Okay, what's wine? Okay, beer. I don't like beer, but wine's cool. Oh, scotch. Oh, yes, I'm an actor. I'm scotch. Yes.
Highbrow.
Yeah, I wouldn't much for whiskey and bourbon, but scotch. I can do some scotch. And of course, vodka and gin, man. Gin was my thing. Gin and juice. Love my gin and juice. So,
Yeah.
we got to the end of the school season, and I was having problems, to say the least, because I had changed overnight. I remember coming home for Christmas, and my whole family did this visible sort of, what the fuck?
Who are you?
And it's funny, when I look back, I had almost come into my own. So it was kind of like the real me.
Right.
Not this actor that I'd been pleasing everybody. I was sort of like, fuck y'all, this is me, deal with it. And I'd always been into my heroes. Had always been John Lennon and The Who. Thank God for The Who. They got me through my teenage years. Without that fury of being able to burn up the stereo and sing Teenage Wasteland, I would have not made it in this world. So I owe Pete Townsend a debt I cannot pay that he saved my life. And I just started letting it all out, my anger, who I was, and to deal with it, and let my hair down, so to speak. And somehow I'd ended up on double secret probation at the school from some violations. There was this food fight that I was involved in.
Oh, that's what you got in trouble for.
Well, not just the food fight alone, but we were going to do it one night because they fucking took all our money, and it was an expensive school, and they served us the crappiest food possible. We knew somebody was taking that money for themselves. So the whole year we'd been complaining about it. Nobody's listening to our complaints. They even had student council. We tried to go through the channels. So then it was like one night there were signs all over the school saying tonight 5 o'clock, tonight 5 o'clock. And so we knew what that meant. It was going to be an absolute pandemonium. Grab as much food as you can and put it in your fists. And so we get to 5 o'clock. I'm like there. I'm like prepared. I got the right clothes on. I'm ready to fucking get down. And I'm looking around. I'm like, nobody's doing anything. Nobody's doing it. And when I looked over, there's a table over there with every single dean, including the top dean from every single division of that school, is having dinner with us that day at that table. So me being the alcoholic, I'm like, well, fuck this shit. I pick up this big old plate of spaghetti. And I start walking over to his table. And I could feel like music behind me as I'm walking, like like movies, the Western Showdown kind of deal. And I'm walking over to the table, and as I walk over there, they're completely ignoring me. They feel me, they can see me, but they're completely ignoring me, just talking and eating. And I walk over the window where the head dean is. And I go, Dean blah, blah, blah. I forget what his name was. And he would ignore me. And I said, Dean blah, 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 a little bit louder. And they all put down their shit and looked up at me in unison. And I didn't hit him, but I took the plate of spaghetti and I threw it up against the wall as hard as I could and smeared it into the thing. And then I looked at him like, what are you going to do about that? And immediately he stands up and says, come to my office. And they fucking ganked me to the office. And when I should have been doing my final scene for whether I'm going to get into the school again, I was actually late because I was held in the dean's office, being held on double secret probation for inciting a riot.
Yeah.
Because they knew that was dangerous, that I was the one that could have incited the whole thing. Why I did that, if you ask me today, I really don't know.
Yeah.
I had to take the bullet. Alcoholics do that. We just take the bullet for people. He's like, fuck y'all, you two, I'll do it.
I'll do it.
I'll do it. I'll put my head through that plate glass window. Talk about John Belushi and Chris Farley. That's exactly what they'll talk about in their story, what they would do. Harm themselves to get that approval, to be like, you're cool, you know? So after that, I was kind of floating. I went back home to Louisville over the summer. My drug habit got real bad. I got into cocaine pretty heavy. And thank God crack was not around. I know for a fact I would not be alive. I have that James Woods, the actor, crack mentality that I would just go, Beavis and Butthead. I know for a fact I would not be alive today if crack had been around. But cocaine was expensive, and it was harder to find. And plus I got into hallucinogens main time. I loved acid. I considered myself, I know some people use, and I don't hate on them, but I sometimes don't understand them. Please explain this to me. People who use just to get blotto and numb. I get it, not my scene. I use to become enlightened and sharper. I want to grow. I want to learn things. I was a chemical experimenter, a chemical seeker. I was reading all these books. I'm listening to all this heavy-duty Pink Floyd rock music and shit. I'm like digging that scene of like, what can we push the veil? Can we push that door open a little bit wider? And I think it can be both. But I just never went into the scene to just get drunk and pass out.
Yeah.
Just never my whole thing.
Never was mine either.
Okay.
I wanted
I'm glad I'm not alone.
Me going. I wanted to continue.
Yeah, man. You and I
like
go.
My deal with the hallucinogens was to get out in the country, get out in the woods, get out in the.
You and I would have had some fun
like
times.
Canoeing down rivers and that kind of thing. I can remember.
I would pride myself on that. I turned on a lot of people, and I would teach them how to do it.
Yeah. Yes.
This is how you trip successfully.
Right. Because somebody taught me too. You know, I remember when it was the time of not doing it well. You know, and
because you're in New York City,
groove,
right,
man, where you could actually do it and pull it off. Because that took some planning to plan a 10-12 hour trip.
In New York City is a very difficult place to trip. You like hear things like people being murdered in the alley, and it's not really happening, but that's what you hear. So we found out about this other school called the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, which is actually the oldest acting school in the country. James Cagney, James Robards, Robert Redford, you name it, they've all been there. Lauren Bacall, and Grace Kelly. And I got in. I did one audition. They were like, "You're in." I'm like, "Cool, I got somewhere to go." Isn't that the story of alcoholics? We're like floundering, and then suddenly I got somewhere to go. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And not really making up our own minds. We just kind of go where the winds take us. But man, I was going to be in New York City, and I knew that was on. Oh, that's what I want. I want to be in the city. So here I am. I get a chance to pursue my love, and my addiction takes priority. And it's a very sad thing to me to think about today that, and I talk to my patients a lot about this, what is it that's so powerful to make you set aside the one thing that's your greatest passion and greatest love in life? And now suddenly that becomes more important. An example of that, I was up for a lead in a play that was going to profit my resume and my future career. And a good shot at getting it. The director liked me, and so I just had to pretty much show up and do the scene. And right when I was getting ready to go on, and I'm watching the other guy audition in front of me, this pretty little thing over there winks at me and then waves this little bag of white stuff. And I'm like, and I followed her right into the stairwell and got high before my audition. Powerless. Just can't stop. I put that ahead, and somehow I still got the part. So at that time in my career, that's dangerous because that reinforced. So I can do both.
Yeah,
I can be high and be a great actor.
I might even be better.
Well, it keeps me up, keeps me focused. At this school, what was dangerous was a couple of things. One is classes only lasted till 1 in the afternoon. Then we're supposed to be working on our plays and our homework and things we're doing. And I learned a lot there, and there are some great in the trenches instructors there who are currently doing movies and acting, not just writing books and sitting up at some university. They were doing the drill, and I did well there. But I had a friend from California, and I won't tell you who his famous father was, but very well known. And he had the hookup, California cocaine, and he taught me how to freebase, prelude to crack. That's why I say I know with crack I'd be dead. And the first time I did that drug, which I will say is the greatest high I've ever experienced, and why? Because it was clean. It's a term that drug addicts understand. When you get that clean high, there's absolutely no downside, no side effects, no rawness, no ache, no edge. It's just like pure. I remember looking at him at one point after we did, and I looked at him and I said, "Dude, I'm like totally fine right now." I mean, there was like no affect to my voice. He goes, "Yeah." I said, "No, I'm serious. I could call the president of the United States right now and talk to him about foreign policy, and I'd feel fine. Everything's fine." And I really was. That's how it hit me. It hit me like this drug that was just like, oh, okay. I was normal. I felt good. And not manic, just fine. Until, of course, the high wears off, and then you're like, you're cutting your teeth off, right? So, that was dangerous, but the good thing was he only got his supply every now and then, and plus I wasn't really sure how to mix it up without blowing myself up like Richard Pryor got on fire. But actually nowadays they say that he set himself on fire. I don't know if you know about that.
Yeah, I don't.
He's got a good friend of his that was there, and they were watching a video of the one we've all seen, unfortunately, the Vietnamese monk, Buddhist monk who set himself on fire to protest the Vietnam War. And Futcher didn't, and that's what Richard Pryor said. He watched it. He says, "That fucker didn't even move." And he was playing with his lighter, and his buddy went out into the kitchen to get her a beer or something and came back, and then this guy on fire ran past him. And the guy says, I think Richard was so high, he set himself on fire. Plus, despondent. I think that sounds like a true drug addict. You're so despondent, you'll set yourself on fire just to end it all. Plus, I was starting to get those feelings, too. I used to walk the streets of New York just wishing somebody would kill me or I'm going to kill them. I was so angry. I was so dark. I was taking all the sins of the world on my back and just not who I am. I'm a pretty happy kid. If you look at the cover of that book, that's a happy kid. But I was one dark sumbitch, man. I mean, I can be extremely dark. People don't get that about me. And I graduated, but at the end of graduation, my parents knew something was up. In fact, I was drunk at my ceremony they came to. Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy, two of the oldest, greatest actors, been in movies and stage, well respected, did our commencement speech. And, you know, my parents were like, man, he's drunk, he's high, what's he doing? And they were like, get in the car, we're going home. And I'm like, we're having fun. Why don't the party just started? Let me be with my friends. And they were like, well, if you don't get in the car now, we're going to leave you here and you're on your own. So I didn't have any options. I'm either going home or I'm going to walk the streets of New York. They weren't paying for my apartment anymore. I think that was a little bit of their ploy to say, you got to get your shit together, but they still didn't quite understand what was wrong. Well, bringing me home as a drug addict was probably a wrong move because I proceeded to steal everything in sight that wasn't nailed down. One story about that, I'd probably already gone through all the other assets. I loved credit cards and getting cash advances. You could do that back in the day with little hassle. But I was walking past the dining room cabinet one day, and my voice in my head said, ooh, silver. And I looked over in the cabinet, and it was my mom's championship horse show trophies that she had won as a child at the Kentucky State Fair, which is a big deal. It's one of the pinnacles of horse show. Not thoroughbreds, but horse show. I don't know what's the word for it. I can't find the word right now.
Equestrian?
Yeah. And I just got the idea I'm going to bundle all those into my car and go pawn them. And I'm not really selling them. I'm pawning them, so I'm going to get them back. And I'm just going to borrow them for a while, and then I'll get them back. They'll never know, right? They'll never know the entire cabinet's empty. And I'm in the car, and I'm driving down the pawn shop, and my entire being and body and soul is screaming at me, this is not cool. This is totally, this is the most fucked up, stupid ass, as a son, how could you do this to your own mother? And I could not turn the car around, even though every part of my being was saying, turn the fucking car around, get that shit back in the cabinet before they get home. And when you tell people that who don't have our disease, they go, bullshit. That blood power that says bullshit is not a disease. And I'm like, It takes a lot of spirituality for me not to put my fist down their mouth because they don't understand. If they ever had anything that took possession of them, they'd be scared shitless. They'd piss themselves. They would shit their own pants if they knew what it was like to have something take complete possession of your mind, heart, and soul and say, we're going here.
Yep.
Take you by the balls. I don't care how we're getting there. I got your nuts. We're going.
Yep.
And you're like, okay. That's how you ask when somebody has your nuts.
Yeah. And
it just was... Two stories I'll tell from the worst of my use, and then I'll get to some recovery. What time are we on the...
1:16.
Okay, cool. We got last 10. So... One night I came home drunk after running into somebody, and they didn't press charges because the thing was minimal, thank God. I should have been I used most of the time when I was in the car just to get out of the house.
Yep.
And I was a loser. I'm 20 years old, living with my parents, and you just feel like a horrible loser. And they're on you every day about what a loser you are. I couldn't even keep a job, man. I got fired from a fucking pizza job because all I had to do was make the crust. Like, just make this fucking crust, dude. That's all you got to do. And I walked away to buy dope on the job because I saw a guy that I thought might be able to hook me up. When I got back, they're like, what the fuck did you go? I was like, I just use a bathroom. Dude, you're out of here. I got fired like a first day or something. Yeah. And just having to tell your stepfather, this is my mom's third husband now. She was on to her third alcoholic. But she doesn't have a problem. She doesn't need Al-Anon. Just be clear about that. No resentment there, right? So I came home from being drunk that night. I don't know where I was. And I went to my mom's medicine cabinet, and she was asleep. And this was actually before she got remarried. And I took every pill in the cabinet, and I don't even know why I did it. This is a good idea. Help me sleep, maybe. And she had mostly tranquilizers, because after her divorce, doctors back then would give women a lot of tranquilizers to help them get through it. And I proceeded to sleep for 3 days.
Woo.
My mom didn't know what was going on because it was typical for me to be still asleep when she went to work. But when she came home at 5 and I was still in bed, she couldn't wake me up. So she called our family physician, and he said, well, he's metabolized the pills already, so he can't take him to the hospital and pump his stomach. So you're going to have to watch a vigil over your own son to see if he dies. And I put my own mother through that for 3 days. And I love telling those stories when I go to hard-ass halfway houses in prisons. And these badass motherfuckers with their Thugs R Us gear. I got my wife beater. I've got my tats. I've got my earrings. I've got my gauges. You know, it's like they all go to the same store to be the same Slim Shady. And I'll say, hey, let's talk about what we did to our moms. And every single tough ass looks down at the floor like they're 2 years old again, 5 years old again. If you want to ever do that to put them in their place where they're not being respectful, it works every time. And so, yeah, I put my own mom through that. Now, I don't tell this story much, and especially back in the day, I would never tell it. But since I've healed and gotten more in tune with my spirituality, I don't care what I say if it helps somebody else, which is what this whole deal is about. I died during that experience, or close to. I didn't have a near-death experience, but there was a moment, and I didn't honor it because I thought it was just one of those hallucinations from being on almost dying. But an angel came, and I remember very clearly it was floating over me. And everything else around was dark, and this thing was lit up. It was lit, glowing. And it had a long pink, white, flowing gown and a big thing around its shoulders and blonde hair and a tiara type deal. And it took my face up into its hands. And it pulled me up. And I was feel my whole being lifted up. And it went. And at that moment, I remember going, and I think I'd stopped breathing and was dying. And to this day, it's hard for me still to believe, but I know in my gut that to honor it, I was saved that day, and as well as many times in vehicles. I mean, I've been in vehicles that have left the fucking road, like airborne, all four wheels in the air. That's a very odd feeling if you've ever driven a car when your wheels aren't touching anything. And I don't know how I survived these experiences. And I always think God, talk about higher power. If you start adding them up, it's an assignment I'll sometimes give my newcomers to say to add up all the times when you could have bit it, like dead. Like, you shouldn't be here today. And I will tell you, since I've been sober so long, a lot of those experiences happened in my sobriety. One time I was climbing the Grand Canyon, and I started falling backwards, and I don't know what saved me. I got the strength somehow to pull myself up. Almost ripped my shoulder off. But I should be dead, and I'm not. That's where you find coincidences turned into patterns, turned into belief that maybe there's something there. But anyways, when I woke up from that, my mom was a little concerned, to say the least. And so she had me talk to a priest. And this was one of those cool priests. He's like hip, late 70s, early 80s. He's like, hey, he understands you guys, your youth. He's going to come talk to you about your drug use. And this guy was naive and completely gullible. And I snowed the fuck out of him. And he directly asked me, he said, when you took all those pills and, touch you very slowly, you kind of took all those pills and thought, were you trying to kill yourself? And I looked him honestly in the eye, and I was telling my truth. No, I had no intention whatsoever hurting myself, even though other times I'd actually taken knives to my wrist and wanted to kill myself. This time was not one of those times. I would have just been a dumb, dead, statistic drug addict. Like everybody else out there, like, what happened? Oops. I know Bob or somebody talks about that. Jump off the bridge and see the railing going away, and you're like, oops.
Oh, wished I hadn't done that.
Mistake. So that didn't stop my using. I got worse and worse and worse. And one of the final days, I'm in the neighborhoods we shouldn't be in as young white men. That's where I always used to go to get my stuff. And I would walk in with impunity, man, like nobody was going to hurt me. I'm an idiot. I've been in so many situations where I should not be alive. I caught what I wanted. I had stolen my mom's credit card to get what I wanted that night, and as usual. And this voice from behind me, as I was trying to get back to my car safely and get home with my shit, said, "Give me your wallet." And I said the usual typical alcoholic, fuck you very much. And he shot at me. I am a big fan of movies and plays and anything that has all that excitement in it. But when somebody shoots at you in real life, and you feel in your heart of souls that they're the motherfucker trying to kill me, any soldier will tell you the shit runs through you. That is the normal response. All these Billy badasses carrying their clocks in the hood say, yeah, 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 yeah. Say, oh, you wait till somebody's really trying to kill your ass. You'll see what that instinct of like stay alive, doesn't care how it looks, doesn't care if I'm pretty, doesn't care if I'm badass. It just like, run! So I became extremely compliant at that moment. And I don't know where the bullet went. I don't know if he shot at the ground. I don't know if he shot at me, it missed. I don't know if he had blanks. I don't know what the story was. But for some reason, I didn't get hit. I should have been. Like in any other addict story, shot in the back. You're dead. If you want your wallet, give it to him. It's hard for me to even say, to even think about that reality. Jesus Christ. Be dead at that young age for nothing. So I became very compliant, shaking, throwing my, I love when Richard Pryor in his routine talks about, people will say, man, I'd have told them Nazis, fuck you, suck my dick. He goes, you wouldn't told those Nazis jack shit. They would have said, what is this? And you'd be like, okay, man, oh, it's cool, man, I'll come. Yeah. That's what happens to you. You go into survival mode, and that's how people, like, things happen in Nazi Germany and thing. It's like you say you're going to do something, but fear is a powerful weapon. So I threw my wallet on the ground. He grabs it up, starts running away. I just tell people my story. That doesn't make me a drug addict because I got jacked. That happens to anybody. If you're going to be in the wrong place, wrong time, you're stupid, you're going to have that happen to you. I've lived in New York City. You better be smart. But I did after he ran away to start chasing him. And the reason why I started chasing him is because he had my mom's credit card in there. And I knew my entire charade. Because I still had my stuff in my pocket. For some reason, he didn't get that. I don't know if he didn't see me cop it. I don't know what happened. I still had my stuff. So I was like, oh, cool. He's just got my wallet. I'll deal with all that. Get a new license later. I still got my stuff I can use. And that's like Bill Wilson sitting up in his place with that bathtub gym in his last days. As long as I got enough for tonight, my whole life is in flames. I'm happy because I got enough for tonight.
Okay, right.
I'll get out of the hood. I got my stuff. Who cares about the fucking wallet? We'll deal with that later.
One day at a time.
I know you drug addict friends of mine understand that out there. So I'm running through there, and I got to say, this is so not who I am. I need to really preface this, but I tell this truth so we can be honest about the ugliness of addiction. My parents went to the March on Washington with Dr. Martin Luther King, and I have never had, I was the first year of busing in Louisville. And that was one of those schools I had to go to during the first year of busing. I never had any racial issues. It's kind of like the Jesus thing. I was just like, if you're cool, you're cool. I mean, that's all. It has nothing to do with skin color. But I started screaming out everything a white boy in the wrong neighborhood should not be saying, and I'm chasing this guy, and he still has the gun. And as we're doing this, I'm seeing like porch lights come on, and people open up their windows, and people coming out their doors like, what the fuck is going on? And I'm screaming it loud enough for everybody to hear. And I'm being insulting to every person in that neighborhood. Like, idiot with a capital I. And that's how we are, man. We lose our shit, and we have the brain science tells us that the brain is hijacked to the point that our instincts are now believing I have to have this to survive. I have to have it like oxygen. So when it's threatened, you actually react the same way as someone who can't breathe. It's desperation time, and that's the way I was. I was going after this guy, and I don't care if I get shot. I gotta get my stuff. I gotta get that credit card. That's what it was. I want to get caught. And at one point, we turned this corner, that corner, this alley, down that alley, and it was a while. And it's pitch dark. And something broke out to me that said, what the fuck are you doing? And that was the only thing. It was like booming in my head. It said, stop. Turn the fuck around and run. It just boomed out of nowhere. And I know, for instance, there's another God moment, just intervened. Angel, whatever you want to call it. And I ran back as fast as I could to my car. Luckily, didn't get killed. Should have been. Ignorant. And I apologize. It was really not cool what happened that night. Get home, and my stepfather's waiting for me at the door. And he says, empty your pockets. And I'm like, a motherfucker. I thought I was in the clear. I thought I was, and they don't even know about the card yet. They just knew I was out. And as long as I'm out, they know something's up. So, and he took pride. My stepfather, third one, another alcoholic, was drinking like a fish. But if you could keep the attention on me, my mother didn't target him. So it was constantly, he made it his mission to bust me. He would stay outside the door. He'd listen outside the windows. He'd tap my phone. He'd follow me around. Fuck, it was miserable. And those of you who've had that experience, you understand. And he took glee. He's pouring it down the drain. He's smiling at me with that big old grin. And he's drunk. He's got his little beer in his hand. And he's smiling at me like, fuck you, you drug addict. Oh, my God, I was furious. But my mom lost her shit. And she's like, I can't believe you're doing this to us again. By that time, I had already been in my first treatment center. up in Minnesota. They'd ship me off there thinking it was going to cure me. I thought I was cured. I actually was serious about wanting to have a better life, and I snowed the guy like, yeah, I'm going to do this thing. And I didn't understand you have to do the whole thing. You can't do like a part-time recovery.
Yeah.
And I was just not ready yet. And so I remember my mom falling on the ground and like terrible wails. What kind of person are you, and why are you doing this to us again, and you don't love us, and all that stuff that comes out of their mouth. And you just want to scream, I can't help myself. But you know it'll fall on deaf ears. And to be honest with you, the entire time as I'm watching my own mother be destroyed by me, fucking son, I'm thinking, okay, is this a good time to tell her about the stolen credit card, or should I wait? And I'm literally waiting, okay, 2 minutes? Is that a good time? Or maybe 5 minutes? But I knew I had to tell her, because if she finds out later and that somebody charged up her card, I got to let her know to cancel it.
Yeah.
Well, at that moment, it was all over. And they're like, we don't know what to do with you. And I got the last time speech that we're going to send you back to that treatment center, but the insurance is saying it's the last time. We're saying it's the last time. We don't want you here. You can't stay home. We don't want you in this house. You got nowhere to go. Get on that fucking plane. Go. Just go. 857 miles away. Minneapolis, Minnesota. Go. And as soon as I hit that treatment center, walking into a treatment center, you've been there before. For my poor friends who have done it 10, 20 times, you just get this immediate shame and guilt. You look at the floor. You don't want anybody to see you. You want to become invisible because you know they're going to say, hey, weren't you just dead? What? It was only 2 months. I was just there. And they knew they were going to fuck with me. So they gave me the hard-ass counselor. His name was Cal. He had a wooden leg from sticking a needle in it too many times. Big, tall, former basketball player for his college. And he would just sit there behind this gigantic, you think I have a big coffee mug. He had this gigantic ceramic mug. And he would just sit there and look at you. Like a golem. Fucking stone golem. You couldn't react. You would like do your song and dance, do your little spiel, do your little bullshit, and he would just look at you. And you knew that he knew your truth. He would look right through you. Because he was a drug addict. You're going to fucking fool him. He wouldn't even bother to convince you you're going to fool him. He'd just stare at you. You do that to our clients today, man. They get violent and they throw things and they run out of the room. But you knew better to do that in this guy's group. Plus, you're in a treatment center. Where are you going to go? You're on lockdown. Yeah. It's harder to pull that in outpatient because they can just walk out the door. Which they do. At the end of my treatment, I come bopping down to his office. I'm like, yep, I'm healed. I'm good to go home. I did everything you said I was supposed to do. And this was a 28-day back in the day. And I really believe they need to bring that shit back, especially with heroin. They're giving these people 3 days of inpatient detox and throwing them into outpatient and back on the street. And they're fucking idiots, and it's all insurance. And our goddamn country sucks. And then we wonder why we have a heroin problem, because nobody wants to fucking pay for it. Oh, we got more money for treatment, but we're not going to give them the proper treatment. Proper treatment is I need separation from the drug itself. Put them on lockdown for a while to get them clear enough, and then very limited freedom after that, and slowly gain it back. People go to the healing place for 9 months and then immediately use it as soon as they leave. Even that model fails.
Yeah.
So he just looks at me, and he goes, well, what happened last time you went home? I was like, motherfucker. How you going to answer that question? You know what happened. You got drunk. You got high. How it happened again? He goes, so there's a car waiting downstairs with 2 guys. They're going to take you to a halfway house. I talked to your parents. Your parents don't want you to come home. You don't have a plane ticket. So you can either get in this car or you can walk the streets. It's January right now. It's about 30 degrees below zero outside. You didn't bring a coat because you're a dumbass from Kentucky who thought you were going to go right back home. They have a coat waiting for you. So you can either get in the car, put on the coat, and go to the halfway house, or you can start walking the streets. Make your choice. And to this day, I bless that man for saving my life. Nothing will get a person sober when they're not ready, short of being painted into a fucking tight-ass corner. Yep. And that corner has to be so tight that you can't flinch an inch. You're there. You're stuck. Went to this halfway house. Where are we sitting on time?
1:30.
Okay. Beginning of my education of real recovery. Got to do it for me now. I go to the halfway house. They go, all right, here's the rules. You got to get a job because you got to pay rent. And your parents only paid 2 weeks. And if you don't have no rent in 2 weeks, we're kicking you out. I'm in a town, I don't know nobody. I have never been able to hold a job. I have years of my Social Security statement where it says 0. That's a true drug addict. All these people that say, oh, yeah, I used to go to work. I'm like, fuck you. If I use that day, I'm a drug that's like, it's on. We're using the rest of the day. Fuck work. I'm not going to work and ruin my high. I'm getting high the rest of this day. That's the kind of drug addict I am. I'm all in. I don't understand this minor league shit. I'm all in. I've always been that way ever since I used. I get that mood change. That's all I want to do. I forget everything else. So I'm panicked. And I remember these tools they've been throwing at me. And I had to go to my room, and you're sharing this room with 6 other dudes. There was 4 units with 6 dudes in each, sharing the same bathroom. I'm just miserable, right? And you're sleeping right on top of somebody else just about. And I got the idea that I need to pray. I need to pray for something. I don't know. I'm in the corner. I don't know what to do. And just like Jimmy Stewart in that movie, It's a Wonderful Life, where he says, God, show me the way. I got down and I said, I don't know what to fucking do, man. I didn't even know if I wanted to be sober, but I knew I was in a fix. And I asked for help. So after dinner that night, they had their house meeting, which they have once a week. And sometimes, not always, the alumni come in. And this guy came in, and he says, I have an announcement. And he announced it to me. He says, so there's this jewelry company I work at. It's a warehouse. We need people. If you need a job, I'll be by here at 6:30 in the morning. Get in the van. And he, from all I heard, rarely came to that meeting. Huh. But that day he came, yep. And I got in the van. And I got a job. And I worked my shit ass, no warehouse, low pay ass job for 2 years with no car for 3 years in my early recovery. These people that bitching about their cell phone service is bad in early recovery. I'm like, fuck you. Yeah. You try being in a place where it's 3 degrees below zero and you need a ride everywhere. Grocery store, it's a big city. Grocery store, to the meetings, to see your sponsor. Anything you want, doctor, anything you need to do, you're going to be asking for a ride. And that was an important piece of my humility. I had always had wheels. I was spoiled rotten. And to this day, that's what this deal about a car is. Yeah. When you don't have it, man, you really appreciate having a car that starts and runs, because I had some beaters in my time. Man, I had a 1974 Pinto was my first car with the fucking back that if you ran into it was supposed to blow up. Yeah. And the radiator was so fucked up that I had to put a gallon of water in it every time I ever wanted to go anywhere. So I carried a jug of water with me everywhere I go put it in it. I had a date one time, and I was like, hold on a second. I had to pour the fucking, she's like, what's up with this loser? And plus, it's a Minnesota car, so it's a rust bucket. You know? And Minnesota became my second home. I love those people. I love the land. I would probably live there. Minneapolis is the greatest city in the world. I love you all. But it's fucking cold. And I had 8 years. I lasted 8, not this time, but I went there back again. I went back again later. And that's enough winters for a southern boy. So I got out of the halfway house, and at 6 months sobriety, I had this shithole apartment, the basement apartment, where you got the little window up there. That's all you got to see if it's daylight. And no money. I had a little mattress on the floor, a little black and white rabbit ear TV, 11-inch that my stepfather had donated, thank God. Nice for him. And his family owned a TV shop, that's why. But I decided to get high one last time. I didn't know it was my last time. I just knew that I wanted to get high. And I didn't know where to hook up, so I went to the bad neighborhood again, started walking, and eventually find the guy. It was complete dirt-ass shit weed, but it was enough to work. And I took that first hit, and I had what I call the Alfred Hitchcock movie moment. And it's a cinematic technique that Steven Spielberg uses in Jaws when the kid gets bitten by the shark and it zeroes in on Roy Scheider's face. Zoom in. The camera just went... And just from that first hit, I had this tunnel vision to my death. I mean, it was just like an immediate, like, this is the dead road. This is the road that does not work. This is the road that's going to kill you. And I got up from that one hit and went and threw it all out. And for the first time in my life, started to do recovery for me, not to prove to my family. And even after all this time I thought I was doing for me, I was still trying to get their approval and not really doing it for me. I was fucked up, desperate straits. I was getting ready to spend my last paycheck, and then I would be homeless. I'm going back to the old lifestyle. And I also call it the Twilight Zone moment, because there was one scene where this guy's walking on a sunny street in New York on a beautiful day, and he turns the corner and he's a bigot, and he turns the corner and he's in Nazi Germany, 1940s, and it's night. And that's what using is like when you've been sober a while. You go immediately back into this hell zone where you don't want to see anybody who's clean. You don't want to know anything about your old friends. And you're immediately dark and depressed and negative again. And no hope. And wanting to kill everybody and yourself. I mean, it was an instant. And I know it was only a one hit, but it's an honesty program. So actually, I should have 6 months on top of what I already have for my sobriety date. And technically, I was sober that time. I just had that one hit. And I find a lot of people have that last more of a whimper than a big blowout or a bang.
Yep. Taste one more taste and go, yeah, no, that's not for me.
So before we get past what it was like and what happened, I want to get to the future. But I do want to talk about finding my sponsor. My halfway house had a meeting on Tuesday nights they would van everybody to, and that's how I found my home group. I was very lucky to fall into it. It's the Polaris group in Minneapolis, and these people were cool. And I always tell my patients, find that one group of people where they're cool. And why they were cool was they accepted me for who I was. I was a fucked up newcomer saying all kinds of shit out of my mouth, and not once did I get corrected. They might adjust me a little bit if I talked a little too long, but I hijacked the fucking meeting like a newcomer does. But other than that, they were very loving and tolerant. And I didn't say the Our Father for the entire first year of my sobriety. And you know why, because of my issues with the God stuff. And I didn't believe that Judeo-Christian bullshit needed to be involved in my life-saving preserver here. So I was making my statement. I knew I couldn't argue with these idiots because they need that God shit, but I knew I didn't have to buy into it. And so I just didn't say it. And not one old timer in my group came up to correct me and said, you got to say the Our Father prayer.
Yeah.
Thank God. So maybe that's what you're talking about. You're not forcing my ideas on you, is that this legacy they passed on to me, that this is a program where people get to choose their own conception. And we either have these principles and we live by them or we die by them.
Right.
And all you fuckers out there, and I hear it from my patients, and they walk into a meeting and there's a sign posted that says profanity is not spirituality. You are proclaiming your idea and conception of a God to another person. You're putting your morals and your values of what you think God is to tell them that they must have your idea of what a God is. And frankly, my God is more than comfortable with me saying fuck, because that's how I met him. And I'll tell that story in a second in a short version because it's in the book. My sponsor was standing next to me talking to another dude, and I'm sitting in my chair, and I'm looking at my feet. I was a feet guy, too. Looking at my feet. Yeah. Looking at everybody in the eye. And he said something witty and funny and smart. And I said, what the fuck? Somebody's as smart as I am? Literally, I had that reaction. That's how big my ego is. Somebody's got fucking intelligence in this place. And I looked up, and I see this wry, smiling dude that was so easygoing. He's like, hi, how's it going? He was just fucking a coffee drinking, smoking cigarettes, son of a bitch, skinny as a rail, fucking it looks like he already had TB and cancer and shit because his skin color, he just smoked and drank so much. And I was like, I think I could work with this guy. And what he did for me as a sponsor, he was not a big with thumper. I think I pushed him more on doing my steps than he would have pushed him on me, but he had done his steps. But he wasn't really one of those guys. And he would listen to me. And after every meeting, I could sit in his car, and whatever's going on in my shit-ass life, once a week, I could just scream, yell, bitch, and he wouldn't interrupt me. He would let me go for a good 45 minutes, a half hour, whatever I needed. Steam up all of his windows, Minnesota, cold, and at the end of it, he'd go, you feel better? He would just sit there and smoke and listen, and then he'd look at me and say, you feel better? I'd say, I'm still spitting nails, and I'm like, I want to say no, but I'm like, yeah. He goes, want to go get some pie? Gee, you know I want some goddamn pie, and you're paying. And he would take me to Perkins, and he'd buy me a piece of pie and some coffee. And that's how I got sober. That's the beating heart of AA, fat friends. Being friendly and let it go at that, like Bill Wilson said. Got through my steps, went through them a couple of times. All right, so things were pretty juicy. I actually got a chance to go off to Hollywood and work on some films. Really crazy ass experiences maybe for another time, but I did work on a film with Brad Pitt, one of his earliest features, and Juliette Lewis, and I don't know, man, I don't understand. I got out there and I found I had changed. I was 8 years sober and I had changed from sobriety, and that whole scene in LA, I love California, they're the coolest people in the world, but LA, it's like a bubble of insanity. I remember one moment that hit me. There was this beautiful blonde girl that I had known from Minnesota that was moved out there, and we were good friends. And she was beautiful, one of the most gorgeous bodies you'd ever see. And she and her girlfriend decided to go in for boob jobs on the same day to hold their hands while they each did it. And they had that pressure on them from the LA culture that they needed the bigger lips, the bigger ass, the bigger tits. It wasn't even the time of the bigger ass yet. That came later. But, you know, and it's just like, why? You are a perfect, beautiful angel in sobriety, and you know yourself. You've done the work. Why are you being programmed into this shit? And it's just a weird-ass, surface-ass material culture on the outsides. And like Bob Earl says, if you could fucking wear your car emblem into your party so everybody knows what you drive instead of just the valet knowing you killed yourself to get that BMW or Mercedes.
Yeah.
So many opportunities in sobriety, but what I really want to get to with the time that's left, we're at about what right now?
I'm 42.
Cool. I want to talk about what happened to send me on this journey for this deeper level of recovery, because that is what made all the difference in my life. I like I said, went out to California. I worked for a corporation. I ran Pier 1 import stores, managed them all over the country, opened a new store for them. I was just living in crazy places like Joplin, Missouri, Davenport, Iowa, Oklahoma City. It's just like, what has happened to my life? Why am I here? But I'm really grateful for those experiences because it sharpened up a different side of my diamond as far as being a manager, that I can run a business like lickety split. I know all about profit loss statements and all that stuff. So come back to Louisville. This is after going back to Minnesota. My grandfather passed away and left me some money, and I decided to get serious about my writing. And that's all I had being out in Oklahoma was my writing. That was my only artistic expression. And I was writing pretty regularly and developing my craft. And this is since 1994. Mm-hmm. So when people say, oh, you became a writer overnight, I started writing seriously in 1994 to work on my craft. And a lot of shit I wrote was garbage, like unreadable. And maybe this is still to this day, but I know it's a lot better than it used to be. It's a craft. You work at it like anything else. Right. So I moved back to Louisville because Minnesota was too damn cold. And I was working in an art gallery and trying to find my way. And I started to get more serious about my writing, but I met a teacher. His name is Dr. Burns Brady, and I give his full name because he's done so much for this world and for AA in general that his name needs to be known. He's not in good health these days, and he's probably not going to last very much longer. But he has helped more people than I could ever hope to help. And he knew this book, and the AA book, and he knew the history, and he knew Bill Wilson. It was his idol. Bill Wilson was his idol. He knew everything. And one night we were at a retreat one time, and I made a comment about my women issues, right, and how they're different from the men issues. And it's because they've been around my life the whole time. And I said, it's almost like when you get a wife or a girlfriend, they get to know you too well, and you give them too much. Then they take your balls, and they put them in a jar, and they put them up on the shelf. And for some reason, I made him laugh. He lost his shit. He started laughing his ass off at that comment. And we became really good friends after that. He kind of noticed me before, and we had talked, but not really that connection. Yeah. And somewhere in that journey, he decided that said, I'm going to take the time to take you through the steps. And he did not sponsor people individually anymore at that point. He was a circuit speaker. He did workshops. He taught at the Healing Place. He felt that his services, which I understand today actually, were better served by his calling from a higher power to take it to more people than just one. I totally understand that. At the time, I was like, well, that's kind of egotistical, but now I totally get it. That, you only have so much time left on this earth. Yeah. How many people are you going to touch, and how much time do you have left? So, on Sundays, he would meet with me in his office, his private doctor's office, and took the time out of his life to take me through that book on a level that I never understood, the history and the depth. I mean, I'd already been through the steps 3 times, but he showed me. And then another teacher, Scott Lee from Tennessee, I was listening to his, and he gives his first name, so I don't think he gives a shit. He says, he has this comment about last names where he says, if we hide in recovery, then nobody can find us. Right. If they try to find us in the phone book, I'm not trying to hide anymore. I don't care. I'm trying to help people, which I admire that so much. And he's military, right? So he comes out with a force when he says that. Yeah. So I've got these 2 teachers, and they're showing me that there's a way deeper level of recovery. And in addition to that, my first sponsor in Louisville, Sarge, he was a drill sergeant from the Vietnam War. People always ask me why I picked him as a sponsor. It's because he went through 2 brain surgeries, and I watched him walk through that and keep a nobility and keep a sobriety. I was like, Jesus Christ, that guy's got something I want. But he started feeding me all these really top-level speaker tapes. And I'm telling you, these guys have done a service for our program that they get derided, they get put down. They say, oh, that guy in his ego, he's out there showing off, blah, blah, blah. And the ones that really have the goods, they are doing work on a level that is healing this world. And it healed me, and it showed me that I'm in these meetings, and I don't see this in other people. Yeah. I clearly do not see a level of happy, joyous, and free. I see people who are uptight. I see people who are running out to grab a cigarette. I see nowadays people on their cell phone. I see people who are like judging the newcomer. I see people who like don't feel very comfortable in their own skin. I see people who are like 400 pounds. I see people who are like having affairs on their wives. And that's not to say that we're not human and don't make mistakes in recovery. We all do, even myself today. Yes, we all do till the day we die. But it was on a level where I knew they weren't healed. There was something missing. And a lot of it was around their childhood stuff. I'd probably say all of it, to be honest with you. And when I came in AA in the 80s, nobody talked about the child shit. It was the 80s inner child movement. Adult Children of Alcoholics came out. And, boy, if you mention that shit to me, you get slaughtered. Oh, you feelies. Did your mama not take you off the tit too fast? Did she set you backwards on the toilet when you were a kid? Ah. That's the reaction. That's what they would do. And then they're smoking during the meeting. You know, they're like shutting their feelings down. It's like, so I had a transformation. I will tell you that after my 5th step, then 6 and 7, and my amends work, and the forgiveness part of 8 that I didn't know anything about, something happened that changed my entire mortal path. And I had always had things that had shaped, shifted, and adjusted my mortal path. But this was like a transformation. Bill says transformation of heart, mind, and soul. But this is like beyond even that, it felt like. So that now my whole goal in life, instead of what could I get, really became more centered around, and it was a slow evolution about how can I align my path more with being of service to my fellows. And like I said, I was going through a career change at the time, and I had a decision to make. I could either go this way and make a lot of money. I'm pretty talented and pretty intelligent. I have no doubt that I could have made a ton of money. I could be a real estate salesman. I could be a fucking doctor if I had to be, if I just buckle down and concentrate. But I had this calling now for life. And the calling was I want to do something to help my fellows on a deeper level, not just bullshit, give a little money at Christmas stuff. So I thought teacher or social worker, and both of which don't pay very much. But at that point, I really didn't care. I did not care about money except for to be comfortable. And we all need to be comfortable to a point. And I talked to a few professors who were doing that, and they said it's all about politics. They said if you're not publishing and if you're not constantly vying for position and you get your tenure, you don't have a job. You're very shaky ground. And I was like, oh, God, I hate politics. I hate fucking dealing with all that fake-ass shaking hands and acting like you like somebody when you don't. But social worker, I was like, okay. And then CD counselor, oh, okay. I can really get into that, helping people save their lives. Cool. Decided to go to grad school. At the same time I was working full-time, same time as I was sponsoring a bunch of people, same time I'm doing my own recovery. It was crazy. I don't even know how I did it. I was 44. Went back to school. You can do it, guys. I don't care how old you are. And my whole path just changed from that moment on. That became more about what can I do to answer this calling. And I remember having a prayer conversation with God. My conversation is just to allude to it because I had mentioned it, started with God through cussing, because I had an old timer who said you need to let your block out. You are so blocked from what happened to you as a child. He didn't say it this way because he cursed it, but he said you got to get over it, so you got to have it out with God. You got to go just lay it all out and don't worry about offending him. You don't have any power, but just fucking have it out. Just same way you have it out with a friend. Like, what the fuck? We need to talk. And then once you get that out, you'd be surprised how suddenly it all starts to heal and you start talking to this power that you didn't believe was there. And that's what happened to me. And so as I was conversating, and I could talk to God like my friend, and I could ask him for help, and I could feel all of my teachers, and I had had so many that I haven't even mentioned, who came in and taught me all this spirituality shit, had said, if you will align yourself with what your higher power wants, your higher power only wants the best for you. And all that religion has taught you about hell and brimstone is false. And just like a parent, it wants the very best. So align yourself with that, and you will find the best happiness in this life. And I was like, all right, I'm going to prove it. I'm going to walk this path and begin doing these things based on what you inspire me to do. If you tell me to go do this, I'm going to go in this direction. I don't even know where it's going to end up. I don't even know if I'm going to have any money. I don't know if I'm going to have anything. But I'm going to follow it. Now, I wasn't quite on the level, and I admire people who are able to do it, that I'm going to get in a fucking ship and go to Nepal and help the poor. Yeah. I wasn't on that level, right? But I was on enough of a level that I knew from going through the steps in that deeper level, shaping my whole different mortal destiny and what I was going to do on this planet. That's where the book came out of. I got my grad degree and started working at this hardcore facility called JDAC in town with the worst infected drug addicts. I thank God for that I cut my teeth in it's like working in University General or something in the emergency room for years. It was the best thing that could have happened to help me as a counselor. And got the inspiration for this book and then started writing it over many, many years. And it evolved. It first started out to be of how can I share recovery? Then it's like, oh, we're going to share recovery with everybody. And then, oh, this is also going to be people who are in recovery who don't have this juice. And I always found from the beginning of the origins of the word juice, I like to take credit for saying it first. Juice Man was the juice man, and he always said this is what they say was juice, juice, juice. I said, I love that. And I started saying it at meetings. And it was funny how from the very beginning when you bring up the word juice in meetings, there's this ripple through the old timers, you know. You're like, what is it? What is it about that word juice you don't like?
Yeah.
Especially when you're speaking and you say, you can almost see them visibly, like twitch or something like that.
Yeah, there's some power in the word that's intangible. You can't say what, but I see what you say. When you do bring out juice, you get some kind of energy pops back out of certain people.
I think because they're anti-juice, and so it's just like kryptonite to Superman. If you want to make an old timer upset, just say you're feeling really juicy today. Brings us kind of up to today, and I just, if you had told me that my path was going to be this way, I first of all wouldn't have wanted it. My first wish in early recovery, what I wanted was more money, hottest girlfriend you could possibly find. Wasn't good enough to have a good girlfriend. I had to have some supermodel, Sports Illustrated bullshit, just to prove to everybody else that I was potent, right? And I had the goods. I think that's every man's journey. My dick is big, you know, bullshit. And I wanted the fastest car possible, all three of which would have killed me in my early recovery if God had given me those things from the get-go. A lot of money, hot chick, and fucking fastest car. I would have been dead. So if you had told me I was going to be on this other path of, like, you know, trying to build my spirituality and help others, I would have said, well, what's that about? Man, where's the payoff in that? And funny enough, and now we can start discussing, man, that's where the payoff is in this service work shit, man. That's where we get to be like God and give to others. And then it makes you feel like God feels, like juice, like that I'm helping my fellows and changing the world and helping it to heal.
Yeah, no better thing in the world, absolutely. If you can participate in your recovery, your own recovery, and hand it off at the same time, that is just like total flow state, total juice.
Flow in that when you're driving home from that, doesn't it feel like you're in the fourth dimension, like Bill talked about?
It does.
For those of you who haven't read my book yet, I love that description because Bill had a dictionary beside him when he was writing the entire big book, and he could have chosen any words to describe how good this fucking thing feels to be sober. And when we tell people it's better than heroin, they look crazy at us. But Bill had to go outside these three dimensions of existence to say it's like the fourth dimension. I was like, wow, what a brilliant analogy.
Yeah, it really is.
So that pretty much brings me up to today, and I can't even believe I'm 35 years sober.
Yeah, just celebrated just last past month.
Mm-hmm.
What is it today? The 8th.
And I'm still on this journey of not knowing where we're going. I don't know what's up with this movement. I get as scared and frustrated as the next person. I'm a complete human being, and that's the beauty of recovery. You don't have to be a saint. That's not the goal. You don't have to be better than. You just have to be you and be honest about who you are. So the fears that come in about, oh, maybe I wasted all my time, or, you know, God's not going to show up and take care of us with this. Oh, you know what? There's less people at the meeting this week. Oh, my God, what does that mean? Is it going to dry up? Oh, my friends aren't coming. Oh, what does that mean? They don't like it?
Yeah.
Dude, all that shit goes through my head.
Right.
It's because I'm 35 years sober. Don't think I'm not somehow immune to all that.
Yep.
But you always have to come back to God's got it. There's a line in the third step of the big book where Bill puts our feet to the fire. It's in We Agnostics, where he says we had to admit that God was either everything or he was nothing. And that's really saying
your choice to be.
And I can totally understand that on a deeper level today, because I didn't get that. I thought that was all religion when I first heard it. Because, you know, I had heard that in my church.
Like I don't know how you can escape that in our society when you start hearing that stuff.
But today, as I understand it, I had tried to live many years as a drug addict with no meaning to life. I lived in a world that turned on random circumstance and man's will, and there was no greater plan, and there's no point. So you know what that did? It made it perfectly okay for me to blast my brains out with chemicals. If nothing matters, nothing matters. Fuck it all. Let's burn this mother down. And there's a lot of people out there destroying our planet with that attitude nowadays. Yeah. That I'm going to die, so if my grandkids don't have air to breathe, fuck it. I actually had a conversation with a guy in the gym about that last week, and he's just not getting it. I'm like, he says, she says, so I guess we got to all give up our cars and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm not saying that. Why do you always go there to the extreme? I am saying, though, that we have technology where maybe I don't have to drive a 1968 Ford Galaxy like I have for my grandmother that gets 10 miles to the gallon nowadays, like a big SUV truck. I might be able to drive something a little more efficient. And those small changes can make a big difference if we all do it.
Yeah, it's really not big. We don't make big, giant
Not recovery, never.
Really, I don't know that. Well, I mean, there are probably some pieces in now and again, some these elements in the world that have been these big giant. You talk about you use a term, and it just slipped me about these big moments that happened where something shifted.
The sea change.
Yeah, sea of change type of stuff happens now and again, but that's not what normally happens. What normally happens is it builds on small little bits of stuff that like that.
Almost like pressure on a linchpin, and then all of a sudden the pressure becomes, for an earthquake, the pressure becomes so much on the plate, but it's little at a time. All of a sudden, there's a big movement.
Yeah. Boom.
Yeah. I love that analogy.
Yep.
But how good is sobriety, Dan?
Yeah, how good. It's really hard to. It's really tough to convey it, and the best will let this kind of story thing. What happens, and the better way to do it is to display it. Right? People see what's going on, and they go, "What's going on with that guy?" You know, something is, like you said, you saw that with the big tall guy and the cigarettes and coffee. You said something is going on there, and I've had the opportunities to bump into people. You were talking also about this. Actual tangible feeling, this thing, this warm, fuzzy, and when you said that about, and it caught me, but I didn't want to interrupt your flow at the time when you were saying it earlier in the podcast, was when mom or whoever was stroking your back. I had an aunt that did that. That's my memory of laying in her lap, like with my head in her lap, and with her fingernails, she would stroke my back, and I would be like purring like a kitten inside, you know.
Yeah, man, we
and
all
there was
need
just
that.
nothing that could, you know, and you know, anything I can do to keep this going forever. That's what I wanted, right? Well, I get to experience that same feeling today, and I ask, whoa,
we got technical difficulties.
that's my air compressor that I blew everything off with earlier. And it is
This would be our time to remind you that this is a real live podcast from the wood shop.
So that is
a wood shop that has a
2
life of its
hours of
own.
it sitting there
Maybe
holding its
possessed
pressure,
over here.
so that's actually a really good thing. That's not leaking down any faster than that. Yeah, that it took that long before it decided that it dropped enough pressure. That it
See,
needed to
you can
keep
tell
that
he's an
running.
engineer, can't you, folks? He gets off on that stuff.
Yeah.
The rest of us are like, whatever.
So I talk to people and ask them, do you experience this feeling? You know, and there's certain people that do, but I get a real chill kind of, and I don't know. I don't really have a term to put around it, but it's actually some physical chills. Some people say God bumps, and I will get like the hair raise on my goosebumps type of thing happen on my arms and stuff. That can be part of it, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, and you said it when you talked about sliding down onto the core of something and it was slipped up through your spinal column, this warm thing, that's more what it is. It comes straight up through like my spinal cord, and it kind of manifests for me in the back of my neck and the back of my head, where I get this tingling back there that, like, when it happens, I want nothing more than it to just continue. And I keep on having these experiences in life where I get to have that on some regular basis. Sometimes it happens when I'm around somebody with a very strong spiritual core, somebody that's really, I always said it's somebody that's really solid. I get it when I experience certain things, like certain yogas will do that to me.
You know, just to interject, I had a girlfriend who put a word on it, and she would call it bliss. She would just bliss out all of a sudden and get these tears in her eyes and just be like radiating, glowing. I had a moment like that. I was very fortunate. So many things have happened in my sobriety, there's no way to cram them in here.
Right, yeah.
But I got to go on a 10-day journey with the Dalai Lama called the Kala Chakra ceremony. Now, the Kala Chakra initiation ceremony is a very sacred Buddhist ceremony to initiate people into the faith. And he spent the first 3 days admonishing people, saying that if you're just here, don't try to just sacrifice everything you've learned and know, because this is new and exotic. And they were at that time when the Buddhists were coming out in the popular culture, and you could see a lot of that happening. He said that's not what that won't be honored. It won't be from your heart. And so but he said, if you're here to absorb the energy and be here and witness, do that. Be part of this. We want you to be part of this, but don't join in and become one of us unless you really know what you're doing here. So and like Richard Gere is sitting down there and all these famous people, and what's really cool about this little thing is that I got my tickets late. And the Buddhists sold their tickets so that if you bought it first, you got the back rows. If you bought them later, you got the front rows. I love it. So I was like 8 rows, and I'm in the center, facing His Holiness, and he's up on this pedestal type deal. And he was doing his, and they were doing some prayer thing, and he started radiating and glowing. And I had seen older pictures of older incarnations of the Dalai Lama, and I will swear to you, I was sober fucking 20-something years at that time. I saw visages showing his face of past Dalai Lamas, and I kept like looking like, is this really happening? And I started blissing out, and I started getting that warm and fuzzy. And you don't have to have drugs to get there. I've had so many of those in my life. Yeah. You can't live there all the time. I had a spiritual teacher who said if we really knew the answers and we knew what we were supposed to be here for and what this is all about, we would be so blissed out, she said, we'd walk out in front of a bus. And that's why Jesus said we have to be in the world, but not of it. Yeah. You have to have that awakening perspective, like me driving here and seeing all those outlets for external fixes, but not a part of it. I'm not going to drive into the vape shop and get a new pipe this morning.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So,
and you say and so like, and I get that, like I know that feeling can't just be sustainable, although in a core I want it, but what I seek experiences and stuff, and most of the time I don't really know that I'm going for that.
Well, would we value it? Would we value it if we had it all the time though?
No, it's what you'd end up taking it for granted at some level, and actually probably be like, okay, well, what's something different.
I'm not ashamed to say it. I've had a lot of sex in my life, and sometimes going without sex for a while makes that sex better.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it does. Yep.
I would say all the time, to be honest.
Well, when somebody will do, Frank did Reiki on me right here on this table, and I get that. That happens to me when I have Reiki performed by some strong.
By Frank, who's real strong. He did that to me on the retreat.
We went to that yoga thing the other night, last Sunday night, where it was a yin yoga, and it was a 2-hour thing where the gal came around, and then while you were in poses, was doing Reiki on you, and in the whole setting and the whole atmosphere was set up like that, and I was just buzzing the whole time, and it was 2 hours long, but it certainly it felt like 15 minutes. We did a cacao ceremony at the yoga retreat where we sit down and had that pure cacao, which is like high level chocolate. Most people would say it's chocolate, but it's like pure chocolate.
Yeah,
and
it's supposed to be so good for you.
Yeah, and you drink that, and you got and I actually had a little bit of a funny vibe off of that it was substance induced, that I was getting that feeling from this substance, but I can lay back. I mean, like I drink coffee, so
of course
food does that. Chocolate,
food changes our mood.
Yeah. And so
we're chemically based creatures.
Yeah, there was a second of that going, hold on, is this okay though? Because it did have that same. I'm ingesting a subject.
The release from sex is a chemical. It's all chemicals for us.
Yeah. So and I have that same feeling, and I have that. So I continue to seek and get these things. Last night,
you have to be willing to say yes to get these things, right? Yeah. You have to try new things.
Yeah. Sitting there last night, going to this meeting and listening to Vlad tell his story, sitting there, same feeling, to sit there and watch him be alive.
Oh, there is no better bliss moment than watching your sponsee tell their story the first time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, same thing, and I'm just juiced walking out of it, and so is he. Just get to experience that all the time, and that's golly, what is recovery? That's a big question, right?
Well, let me try a different angle, and it may sound a little negative at first, but this is strong on me today, so I just wanted to share it while I'm here. The longer I'm on this path with this book, the more awake I'm even becoming, to the point where it's almost like excruciating, and I see everybody else walking around asleep, and you just want to shout out like Chicken Little, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And in this case, it's true, because our planet is failing, and yet people are just going around like everything's normal. It's going to be just like this the rest of our lives. Let me give you a change that's happening underneath our feet that's part of this systems and institutions-driven sickness that we have created and is destroying us and our world. On the news last night, big announcement. They're so proud. Microsoft has partnered with Louisville, this big technological investment to come into town, blah, blah, blah. And everybody's like, oh, good. They're all clapping. Everybody's happy. You know why they're here? To assist businesses as they automate for the future.
Yeah.
And finally, I saw a news story in a separate channel, which finally showed that angle. And Mayor Fisher gets up and he goes, we've estimated, since we're so heavy in technology, this is going to impact our community stronger than others. But on average, for all communities, 28% of positions are going to be eliminated. 28%, nearly a third of people who are working now within the next 10 years are going to find themselves without work. This is going to reshape our entire world. What are they going to live on? What are they going to do? There's an argument in the election about, you know, a national salary, you know, that we give people money just so they have money to live, but then what would they do? So that means whoever's going to be making your pizza, taking your order at a restaurant, your nurse is going to be, they've already got robots in hospitals that come and say, how are you feeling today? Do you need the nurse's attention? What the fuck are we doing to ourselves? Why the fuck are we allowing these guys with all this goddamn money to control us? It's all about money and power. It has been since these guys built the pyramids. And we still haven't woken up that we as the people, especially in this country, have the power, and we're still voting in billionaires. We're still voting in people who went to Yale and Harvard and who have that mentality that they don't give a fuck. What they care about is having more money and power. It's a game to them. There's a great documentary on Amazon right now, and I haven't seen it yet, but it's in my queue, about the 1% and how they live and how it's all game. It's all about, I have a better car and I have a better child. My child's going to this school. Blah, blah, blah. It's just a game to them, and they're burning our planet. They are destroying every resource that we need to be alive. And when are people going to revolt? And I love what Jordan Peterson says about it. We are stuck in this pattern of civilization where we organize, then we have a government, and then there's corruption, and then there's revolution. We burn it all down. And then we organize, and then we have a government, and there's corruption, and we burn it all down. And when the fuck are we going to wake up, or are we fated to just go down with the ship? And I really believe with all my heart, otherwise I would not spend 6 years of my life dedicated to this effort, that these 12 steps is the only hope we have to change people's psyche. And we've seen it every day in our meetings. We see a guy drag his ass in who's nearly dead from being a heroin addict and drunk. And he doesn't, I got a guy in my group right now coming off meth. He's like, I don't know why I'm here. My sister wants me to come. I don't want to say anything. Can't even sit in his fucking chair. And that guy, if he does this work, becomes us. Yep. I'm the spearhead of civilization trying to help others and change this world. How the fuck does that happen? Only through this revolutionary experience of going through the steps. You name me one other thing that can do that for people, please, in such a short way and very easy to understand, to get it done in 4 or 6 months. What the fuck? Is there anything else on this planet that can do this? And so I'm out here and I'm like feeling this every day. And I'm watching the sickness. I'm watching people getting fistfights in traffic, right? Seeing people at the stores fucking step over their own child because they want to get that thing on sale because it's Black Friday. Insanity everywhere we go. And we all know it. You talk to anybody at the gym, on the street corner, in your neighbor, over the fence here. Hey, how's it going out there? World's pretty fucked up today. God damn, yeah, I saw the news last night. This is all fucked up. But I'm not part of that. Yeah. I'm not fucked up. What I do is normal, and what they do is fucked up. And that's the same thing an alcoholic does. It's everybody else's fault. It's everybody else's problem. I'm fine. Yep. If they would just leave me alone and do what I say, the world would be a better place, actually, if they let me run it, right? Right. When are we going to wake up? And does it have to take a disaster where we lose our kids? Another war, a famine, drought. It's all coming. Yep. And really what started my argument, and I know I go off, guys. I know you have to turn the volume down on your fucking iPod or listen to me sometimes. I apologize. I'm a passionate guy. We need people with passion. We need people who are not afraid to get up at the mic and say, what's up? Too many people are trying to be just politically correct, and they won't speak the truth, and we're dying, right? But the argument in the gym with this dude the other day started from the fact that I just said, I am just so tired. And I spoke my truth with him. I've known this guy a while. I've been going there for a long time. We've been good friends. We just talk surface shit every time we're in there. And the heat started it, and I was like, well, fine, I'm just going to speak it because I was feeling it that day. I said, I'm so tired of a fucking politician who doesn't even give a shit. All he cares about re-election and his fucking bank account, his power status, making policy decisions for our children and grandchildren, and he couldn't even survive the first semester of the classes that these scientists had to go to, and they've dedicated their entire lives. There's a guy living in the Antarctic right now who's given up his family and his entire life because he has a passion for our planet, and he's pulling ice, fucking tubes of ice out of the fucking permafrost and shit all the way down to prove that we are destroying this planet from man's footprint. I mean, they've got some idiot politician in Washington living in the lap of luxury saying, climate change is just weather. It don't exist. Now, fuck it. And I'm listening to that guy. Why am I listening to the scientist? And I can't even survive his classes. I wouldn't even know how his brain works. This is a smart fucking dude. Dedicating his whole existence to this path to figure this out. And we're allowing this idiot. And because he says it's not true, we all go, oh, well, it's not true then. Fuck. And all of us feel this. And it may not be about the climate change issue. It might be some other issue in your life. If I get this crazy, I know everybody else out there is getting that crazy. I see it. Throwing things at their television set and saying, what the hell is happening? When are we going to wake up?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'll shut up and let you speak.
I'm worried about it.
We all should be worried about it, right? You have kids.
And I should be more worried about it. I'll do this this one day at a time thing and this checked out thing maybe to a detriment of not paying attention anymore.
I think
because I don't watch any of that. And I'm just like, and it's somewhat of a defense mechanism in a way that I've just completely checked out of most of it. I don't hear it. I frankly don't know. I can't form any opinions because I am not that scientist or the millionaire, so I sit on the fence almost in a bad way there, but I still I hear that, and I do see these people walking around. I see the same story about, it doesn't make any difference where I'm at. I won't run into the dude. He wants to tell me about how screwed up his boss is and this menial job he does, and if they would only do it the way that he knows it needs to be done. And I see the zombies walking around. I see that. I see the complete material driven folks that are just set on more of stacking up possessions around them, the new car, the bigger house, the constant procession of acquiring things, hoping to fill those holes in their souls, and frankly not feeling that anymore. There was a time that I needed that too. I was looking for the next gun, the next car, the next this, the next whatever, new wheels. It didn't matter. I was on this search for something else besides the fact that I'm dumping chemicals in me day in and day out to try and find.
And my happiness was always in the future, right? If I get this thing, then I'll be happy when I get that new car or whatever.
And the sense of being okay in my own skin and having enough, and being in not so much, and not feeling like in that mode of scarcity that like any minute the blankets are going to be ripped off of me. So that's another piece of what is recovery, is to not be living in that fear-based deal where I'm constantly reaching for the next thing to make me happy.
And I get it. I mean, I have to have a balance where I need to pull away more. So you and me are like the yin and yang, right? I'm a little too plugged in sometimes. And I don't mind that. I come from a family that was highly politically involved. My dad ran for Congress. I didn't even talk about that piece. So, but there is a balance, right? And
we do kind of lean on... the seesaw is on other opposite ends of it.
It's good, man. You balance me out, and maybe I get you more stimulated.
I hear a lot. That's a lot of what I get is coming out of you, because I just don't listen to the others.
But I'll even go here, man. This is my insanity of us, the people who claim to follow Jesus the most. And I have an argument, and it destroys everything else that comes out of your mouth. To have a teacher and claim a teacher, you must do as they taught. Not just on Sunday, but every day of the damn week. That's what a teacher is. They change you. You walk their path. And so I really wonder what Jesus would say about what kind of custodian we are being about God's creation on this planet. That all the plastic in the ocean, et cetera, et cetera. We don't have to go down the list. What would he say? And he'd probably say, "Yeah, I was fucked up. You don't realize you need this planet to live, and it's got plenty to sustain you. You don't need to stop having so many babies. It's about getting filled up, but it's still salvageable." And we keep hearing the news stories. If we change now, we can still do something.
There's still time.
You're right. People are too unplugged. But who's really taking that frontline stance to keep it in our face? I mean, I'm going to tell you my honest opinion, and I'm biased. I will admit it. The death of John Lennon, I think, may have affected our future more than people realize, especially people who don't even like him, because he was always the guy that was willing to take the bullet after he left the Beatles. All he did was advocate. All he did was organize marches and get on the microphone and say, fuck it, this needs to be talked about. Whether it was the Vietnam War, whether it was Nixon, he turned out to be right. Nixon was a fucking crook, which I didn't even talk about, shaped my attitudes a lot. When I saw Nixon leave office, I was like, what the fuck? My president's a fucking crook, and I was 11 years old. Yeah. That made a big impact on me.
The one that got me in the same regard was when I watched that actor get elected. I don't know that
Reagan,
It just, for whatever reason, in my little kid inside, it just did not compute. Now I got no kind of real.
Because we hold these guys. You look at Mount Rushmore. You look at Mount Rushmore. These guys are like gods. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson.
I really didn't even know him as an actor. All I knew is that that's what my family and people were saying. I didn't see TV shows that had him in there, but that made it go, huh? Because like you said, we were talking about the real founding fathers.
So where's that disconnect, though, Dan, on people who claim to follow Jesus and they're willing to burn this planet down?
Yeah.
Where's that disconnect? I don't understand. That's part of that mass insanity that's got a hold of people.
It is. Yeah, and I don't, golly, it's another place I've checked out of, you know. 'cause
And
I don't
Jesus
even
was
get-
all about being a custodian in general. If you found him, you would find him with the poor. You would find him with the downtrodden. You'd find him with the people with diseases like leprosy and people that nobody wants him around. Nobody's going to talk to him. And he would go straight in the middle of it, just like Mother Teresa in Calcutta. That's where he served. And then all these people in their houses on a hill that say, oh, I believe.
Yeah, because where are the voices of reason today, you know, that are out there? I mean, and again,
Or
that's where
anybody,
I'm
even a
checked
radical.
out,
Where's the
but-
voice of radical? Where's the voice of willing to say, hey, man, wake up.
That's what I mean.
Wake up.
Because there's not a beating of that kind of drum that I know now. That might be a result of my checking out, right? Because I don't watch the TV and I don't know. And that actually, to some extent, is a real honest question. Who are the voices that are being heard today that have, you know, like the John Lennons and the people.
Plus,
like
we have
that
a
that are
power
talking.
structure that keeps them down, right? They won't
Yeah.
give them a national platform to speak. I mean, I've always had this goal in mind that if I turn out to be the profane spiritual dude, is the guy that mixes profanity. And that's what our program is all about. One minute we're talking about finding God, and the next minute we're saying, fuck everybody. That's real, right? That's the way all human beings are built. We're kind of yin and yang. And I don't mind being that guy I'll take a bullet. I'm going to do what I can to help people wake up. And we are. Man, these TSSR groups, I'm getting more and more feedback. One guy and his wife, the guy I'm helping out personally, I'm sponsoring him, but also his wife now, she spoke at the meeting last week, and she is just on fire with this, man.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have our disease. She just knows that something's wrong, and she wants to get well.
Yeah.
And at least
I thought it was real powerful that she said, you know, that awareness of it. She'd been helping. She'd been going to this stuff for this many years, you know, to help him, you know, to support him. And then woke up and went, hey, what about me? Hold on a minute. I get to have this too, you know. It's not just a tailwind that I get to grab a hold of. Let me in.
And I think if worse comes to worse, I mean, my teacher now, she's pretty radical. She just says the earth will always be here. It's a level of existence. We'll go. Earth will swat us off like a parasite. Then it will evolve and be something else. It's a level of existence. But I got to work on my soul, man. That's all I have. I got to work on this piece of me that's going to be here when I die. It's going to be existing when I die. What goes on after here? And that's my karma. And that's what we do as alcoholics and addicts. We know we've done a lot of bad stuff. I just described some things in my story. What can I do to repair it? Nothing but even the scales, man. I got to start laying stuff on that positive side of the scale to try and save your soul, save yourself. I'm worried about getting into heaven, man. I'm worried about what's going to happen for my deeds. And that's why most of the world believes in terms of reincarnation and everything, that there's a karma effect. You reap what you sow. And even Jesus taught that. They theorized that when he went off into the desert for those 3 years and disappeared, that he ran into a lot of Eastern ascetics who were living out in the desert. They taught him all that sort of Buddhist angle, Eastern religion stuff, because a lot of his love thy neighbor and grain for grain, being paid back what you do, that's all Eastern thought.
Yeah.
That was not part of the Pharisees' belief, not from Jerusalem where he was.
Yeah. Well, there's I do like that balance in the karmic scales angle and that, and you taught me that. And you know, today for the longest time, more likely, if I touched you, if you came in contact with me, there was a negative response from that. It was something that was not going to be good for anybody. David G talks about that spreading sweet, loving nectar, or the negative poison, leaving them behind a toxic fume from your experiences with other people. And that's what I did for a long time. I left that toxic fume, whether if I actually did anything or not. It was like Linus's little cloud or whatever that followed me around, and I left some with you, you know. And today I get to have an opposite effect, you know. And today as I move around, man, I'm leaving the positive. I'm leaving that sweet, loving nectar when I move around. And I'm not doing that for something. I'm doing that because that just feels like the natural. That is just the path that I'm on today. It's not an angle. It's not, you know, it is balancing the karmic scales at some level, but that's not my goal, right?
It's not in the conscious part of your mind. Yeah. And we always say, you know, people don't remember what you thought or how you felt about certain things. They remember how you made them feel.
Yeah, right.
And your little character you were looking for, I think, was Pigpen.
Pigpen.
He always had his little dirt cloud.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Here, you have some dust.
Yeah, you just leave that behind, you know. You could tell where you've been. And we talk about that a little bit, too, you know, as you deal with these people who are spiritually sick, you know, and you get around them, we feel there's just like a slime that gets left on you after the fact, you know, if you're not, you know, if they're sick enough. It's like, I want to go home and take a shower after.
Absolutely. So here's the cool thing about recovery is you get to find out who you are, you get to have passions, and the most important aspect is you get to express them and let your truth be known. There's so many people out there dying right now because they have no outlet. They don't have a meeting to go to speak. They don't have a sponsor to talk to. And so they kind of know who they are, but most of it's been sold to them. The marketplace is telling them who they are. You know, I'm a Ford guy, I'm a Chevy guy, I wear this kind of clothes, whatever. I shop at this store. I have this credit card, whatever.
Yep.
But speaking your truth, which is something we never had as children growing up in our alcoholic family systems, it's where it's at, man. That's the only thing that's going to heal this world is truth. All of our teachers have said the same thing.
Yep. You know,
and I don't think we're abandoned. I don't think God has abandoned us. I think there's still prophets and people trying to help and heal this place. But we better wake the fuck up.
Well, I really think that is happening. Because, like I said, the movie.
You see pockets, right? You see pockets of hope.
Yeah.
I do.
Yep, I do. And, you know, as I move around doing this, you know, where I'm not closed up is that I'm visiting the community in a lot of different cool places, like these yoga communities and these other things that are going on.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not engaging in the media on the TV screens and that kind of thing, but I'm certainly not isolating at any level. I'm out and about and trying out new cool stuff. And in those pockets, I see a lot of enlightened people who are that are looking for the same thing and in the same kind of trajectory as what we're talking about here, about these continue to take care of my own soul, to reclaim my own self, find myself. And meanwhile, while I do that, I put out this ripple effect that affects the people around me. And you know, if that's the more and more that's happening, you know, you're going to have these we talk about the drop, like if you drop the pebble in the pond, you know, and the ripples come out, you know. But you know, if you can, like, you know, so you got this 100-acre pond, and every 10 feet you drop a pebble, and the ripples are bouncing off of one another and intensifying like that, you know. And I think that's kind of what's going on, but it's really hard to see because at some level I'm only looking at my little 5-foot piece of water. I don't see the rest of the pond.
Absolutely true. And I admire that. I admire people who have the discipline of yoga to really make it their daily practice and as their sort of religion, ceremony. Rogan talks about his jiu-jitsu and the commitment he has to that. I admire that in people greatly. My concern, that's always in the back of my head, and it's not a judgmental thing, it's just always there. That voice always says, but what about healing those other parts of you? That stuff in your childhood, and that stuff, what actually goes back and heals that part? Yeah.
Yeah, there are tools in yoga to do that.
Yeah.
There are. The yoga is not just the poses. There's inquiry and looking back and doing that, you know. The thing is, you know, it's so, I don't, you know, these tools are clear cut. You know, that's a little esoteric. And like,
you have to find the right teacher.
And you have to have the right teachers and that kind of stuff. So the tools are there. But not in the defense of that. Well, I think what's happening is people that are working on themselves, whatever tools they're using, and I'm not even sure, but you can tell that they're doing something because they didn't get where they're at by accident, right? And, I mean, you run into this rare soul who is there, you know, that just is, right? I mean, I do run into some people now and again that really didn't. They just got it somehow. The gift was in their hand from the beginning. Spirit didn't get stepped on. It's like winning the lottery or something almost, I think. But that's not the people I'm talking about. What I'm finding is these people who are doing this work on themselves like that are also finding that yoga is an adjunct to their personal recovery of whatever that is, you know, and that's where I see it more than anything else. It's not that that's their primary thing. It's just that's an adjunct. That's just an add to into that. But it's a question, you know, and I'm not strong enough in speaking my truth out there, because it'd be something I'd like to do as I kind of continue to fold into that, is to ask people, what did you do? You know, what are you doing? What are you doing for you besides this? Because I know the poses are not doing it. I mean, they will help. That's anything. Anytime I'm doing something good for me, is going to lift my spirit, right? And there's something about yoga that does that at some level beyond, I think, some other exercise tools. But yeah, I don't know what they're doing. But the fact of the matter is, these are concrete tools that take very, you know, like you said, 4 or 5 months, 6 months. If you got a teacher to take you through it, you can have a really big change. You know, these other people that I'm also looking at are doing this, you know, have been like years and years, and they're not, you know, it's kind of the slow road, and I guess that's okay too. But we need relief faster.
I gotta be careful because I'm very myopic too in my perspective because I work in the field. And, I see sickness everywhere. That's just normal. It's like a cop. Yeah. If you're a cop, you see people committing crimes everywhere you are in public, even if they aren't.
You are.
So I have to preface that and say that. But, and like I said, I admire that greatly when somebody has a discipline to really take something and that's their passion and they want to learn more about it. That's everything in life. And yet, the people I've been around who have great spirituality and this and that, there's something about it that they've got that resentment angle or they've got that angle where the past comes up and they're just, I'd like to see their kid free. That's that happy, joyous, and free thing that, you just don't carry that weight on you anymore, And even though I get passionate and sometimes it sounds like an angry energy, and I don't mind that. I mean, I think anger is a very powerful tool to change the world. Anger is useful.
Sure.
We were given that as part of our palette.
Yep.
I don't judge my emotions anymore like I used to. I grew up in my family, being happy and jokey guy was acceptable and praised, and then being the sad and angry guy was no, that's not. Because, wasn't safe. But the alcoholic dad got angry if people got hurt. Yeah. So I was taught that there was good and bad feelings. But it's all about how you channel it, and we need passion in this world.
Absolutely.
People are just like dead. If you go to the airport or go to any place and just watch people, man, they're walking around like devoid of all emotion. And the more we integrate with technology and this trend of automation, which I told you is coming for our workforce, where's the human soul? Are we going to lose our identity?
Yeah, there's a lot of spooky stuff that comes out of that. I mean, we have to have a sense of, I believe, it's my opinion, that we have to have a sense of purpose. And that's one of the things, it's one thing to like maybe taking these jobs away from a standpoint of not having income and thing, but you're taking away people's purpose at some level, and, and
well, they've already done it because most jobs, they were saying that the majority of jobs in America right now are repetitious, non-thinking, manual labor.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've taken away their soul. I work with a lot of people who work for a major company in this town, and that's all they do all day long.
Yeah, and then, I mean, even to the parts of like having these navigation tools inside your phone anymore, and what the kind of mental effect that has, that you don't have to like think about where you're going anymore, and I don't have to like research anything anymore. Every little piece of knowledge is at my fingertips. I don't really have to like.
It's real easy.
Yeah, I don't really have to. Well, there's another little thing that happens once in a while. We'll be like in these groups and chats and different things like that. Somebody will ask a question, and I'll have a little piece of me that wants to go, Google it, dude. But but I come back to this thing about we should engage and discuss this together. And that is, and I'm also, this guy maybe has a trouble reaching out to us, maybe, and he's posed a question, and that is his way of going like, I want engagement from you. That's his. And if I just say Google that shit, I'm totally just wiped the damn tool away that he's trying to use to engage in this community thing that we also know is so important. This connection we talked about earlier, about having these connections with these other people that are my lifeblood today. I know that this human connection and sitting with people and talking to people on a daily basis, having telephone conversations, being in contact with my buddies and my tribe is something that's vital to my life today. And it wasn't because of that old isolation thing, or the only people that were in my life were the people who were using with me, which we weren't connected at all, really. There's a huge brick wall between me and the guy sitting next to me when I'm using with him.
The problem with Google is it's too clear cut, and there are facts and figures. However, when you're dealing with life, it's much more complex than that. There's layers. There's layers of facts and figures. There's gray. There's not just black and white. So my sister had told a story recently in our family. We were having dinner, and she shared, when she was growing up, my family was extremely politically involved, and they would have conversations at the table where they were throwdowns, and we were kids, and we'd sit there and we'd hear it all. And they were like, people would cry, people would scream, and at the end of it, they would all get up and clean up the dishes and hug and say, good to see you, and go about their life. And actually, that's the way politics used to be. You used to be able to scream across the aisle and then still go to dinner or lunch with your buddy. And it wasn't personal. It was just differences of opinion. That's what's happened with Google, I think, is it's become too much, I'm right, this is true. And then, whoa, maybe that's not true for everybody, right? Yep. And then if people's sense of comfort, familiarity, and what's true is threatened, they usually fight. That's the human animal. It makes them very scared. It's threatening my security and what I think is real and true. I don't know. I kind of think we're missing that human aspect that, we can have differences of opinion, and we do that in recovery.
Yep.
We talk it out, right?
That's a good thing. Yeah, that's another statement. Bob Earl, just because we see things differently does not mean one of us is right and one of us is wrong.
I always like the opinion that we love everybody in recovery because they're my fellow brother and sister, and I need them to survive. That's what's keeping us getting along, is knowing that our life is on that line for it.
Yeah. Along with all that automation too, that there's been I've been hearing some talk about like these things no longer like I joke around the other day, was talking to somebody, we were all worried about these chips they were going to put in us and potentially track us and all that stuff, and essentially what we've done is we volunteered to carry one around and this tracking device around in our pocket. We volunteered. They're not going to have to invasively stick it in us. We volunteered. Matter of fact, I pay the bill for it. Right?
Yeah, you do.
And
and you must have it.
Yeah. And so, but there's also some talk about this being integrated into you, like maybe that you see the screen inside your contact lenses or inside they already have the glasses that do it, and this is not a device you carry anymore. It's something that's in you that actually brings that knowledge to you, like intuitively, similar to IA kind of stuff, and I don't, that stuff does scare me. So you were talking about getting like, what do you think is true? Rocking you back, rocking your reality, some kind of thing that you found fundamentally true all of a sudden becomes shaken.
Well, we maximize things we want the best, right? Because if we get the best and the best product, best produce output, then we get better profit. That's what it's all about. So robotics, I didn't mention that. That's coming where you're going to have this machine that's human-like and can do that job a lot faster and better than you can. The human side is going to get left by the wayside because we want this guy because he can fucking get it. If you embed a bionic in your arm and your arm can move that product down the line faster than the next guy, you're going to get the job. So my argument is in the long term with this program and it's, labels that get thrown around, if there's any label I accept for myself, it's a humanist. I care about human fucking beings. That's it. Don't fucking put me in a box because I can be all over the map with my other beliefs. You'd be surprised. I might seem radical, but I have some pretty conservative fiscal beliefs. That comes from my business background, right? You can't fucking live on a credit card, You need to have a debt that's under control. Duh. I have to do it in my home. You should have to do it in Washington, right? And most Americans actually fall in that category where we are more in the middle on most things. But I'm just afraid we're going to lose the human spirit, what it means to be a human being.
Yeah.
Emotions are already being engineered out by corporations. I had to sign a fucking another waiver at work the other day. I didn't even tell you about that. That's what greeted me on my desk. Another waiver, like, I agree to this. I agree I will not do that. And I signed my life away, and they're going to hold you to it because the lawyer's got that paper now. So if you violate, you're gone. I understand I will be reprimanded and or up to discharge if I violate, blah, blah, blah. And we're signing that. And same way the little tentacles from the electronics I had happen last night. Will you allow Amazon Music to access your files and your phone? God, fuck, really? I just want to hear a tune.
Yep.
I don't want you to have access to my entire goddamn life.
Yep. Yeah, I get a little newsletter that comes into my Gmail account, and I really don't even know how it happened, but it does have some things in there that interest me. And what I'm finding is it was a bait thing, because first they would let me read them, and now they want me to register and sign up in order to read these articles, And and today I was looking at it earlier this morning, and I was like, you know what? I'm not signing up for another thing. Every time I want something out of this thing, it needs my email address and my, some kind of connection to me, and then I end up with another bunch of bullshit piling into my inbox because I've given that piece away.
I think it's a new app or a feature on the Galaxy phone because I had an update recently and it happened to me. You go to a new website and it'll ask you, would you like Galaxy to automatically make this one of your favorites? It's like, no, dude, I'm just reading this one little thing. I don't even want to come here again.
Yeah.
Would you like to join us? Would you like our newsletter? Would you like to push the button? Would you like to see this ad? Would you like to go over here? Stop, dude.
Yeah. And the easy thing to do is to hit the yes, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because the little X button that gets you out of it is like you got to hunt for that.
It's so tiny that you accidentally hit on the ad because every time you hit on the ad, they get money. So it's so small, they want you to accidentally hit on the ad.
Yeah.
And I love the pages that load and you're like trying to press that button and then the page jumps.
Yeah.
As it finally loads the last time and you press the ad and you're like, ah!
Yeah.
And they get their little money. Don't think that's not by design.
Yeah.
That's not just random.
Yeah.
Nothing happens when it comes to money that's random.
Yeah. It's interesting where things are going to go, and
we just have to speak. That's all, folks. Find out who you are, heal yourself, get your own house in order, find your truth, and start speaking it. Don't be silent. That's when it's going to happen. Talk about Nazi Germany. That's what happens when you're silent.
Yep.
So, where are we at?
236.
Oh, I think that's where you were at.
Yeah,
Very good.
Someplace right around that
Very
same thing.
good.
So
We
we'll
did
do the
good.
same kind of thing unless you've already feel like you've done it, but I will give you
I
the
don't think I'm
opportunity.
depleted, buddy.
That's something else that we've done. That's was something in my yoga teacher training is that we said that we were complete at this moment. You know, not that I'm complete forever, but when we would do a dialogue in order to make sure that somebody had actually gotten out what they needed to get out, you would signal your friend or your partner that you were paired with or whatever, or if you were speaking to the group, and the word was I'm complete in this moment. I think that's a neat way to close and allow people to have their voice. You know, that's like, okay, I've spoke my truth for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still reserved the right to have more truth,
Mm-hmm.
but for now I'm good. So man, it's been cool.
I do have a final word though.
Well, then take off, brother.
I thought that was the tradition. You
It is. I thought you said you were done. I thought you said you were complete.
Am I ever really done? How long you know me?
Yeah, well, I know that, but I thought that's what you signaled to me a second ago when you said I feel complete.
Well, this is hammering on my conscience. That's why I want to bring it up. Didn't really talk enough about the early first year of recovery, and I won't extend this, just to say shortly. I think there is no nobler path to walk in a world that is so afflicted than to try and walk against the grain. And for drug addicts and alcoholics, if anybody has never walked that path, they do not understand how noble and heroic and hard it is just to get one more day of sobriety. Mm-hmm. And I would like crawl out of my bed. I had a calendar where I'd mark the days off when I was finally doing it for me, saying, okay, good, I don't have to do day 40 again. Fuck, that was a hard day. I almost killed somebody today. I was fucking so upset. And I felt like I had this guy inside my gut who was scraping at my insides every day. And I didn't even do heroin. It was just there. An emptiness. I just can't deal. A depression, a darkness. It was with me all the time. And I was either going to kill myself or somebody else. I walked around that way a lot. And I put that smile at the face. How you doing? Fine. And it was going to go away. I had faith it was going to go away, but it takes a while. And meanwhile, you've got all these other idiots going, you want a drink? Go to a restaurant. Want some wine with your meal? And as I said the meeting the other night, sometimes I like to say to the waiter, no, but if you got some weed, and I've had people reach into their pocket as if they were getting some. I was like, I know you got some. You're a fucking waiter. To walk against the grain is hard in any culture, any society. All of our revolutionaries, all the people that changed history, Gandhi, they get killed for it. If you walk against Jesus, get killed for walking against the grain. And yet nobody thinks about that when it comes to a lowly drug addict. They're all just like, oh, fuck them. I've heard so many people say, just line them up and shoot them all. I've heard that more times than I hate to even admit that that's the attitude. And meanwhile, that dude has a beer and a cigarette in both hands. Yeah. And he's blind. He's just blind. So come into these pockets of recovery and making it to my meeting every night and having my sponsor who saved my life. I have no doubt about that today. I owe him a debt I keep trying to repay to others. To end on it this way, I always knew from birth I wasn't wired right for this world. And Bob Earl tells this story about sneaking out of his bedroom and climbing down the trellis at second-story bedroom every night. He would go sit in the lawn chair in the backyard and look at the sky because he just knew that the spaceship that had left him here had made a mistake and was going to come back and get him. And every alcoholic has that mental illness inside their heads where they just don't feel like they quite belong. And even when they're in a crowd, they feel lonely. And so to find this pocket of people get me and I'm safe and it's a family that we never had, we need to uphold that and keep it and maintain its sacredness. So please stop infighting. Please stop picking on your brother. Please stop looking for what's wrong and start building on what's right. And when you see that new guy, really give him an extra hug and an extra cup of coffee and a wink and a help and a smile, whatever you can give him to let him know that this will get better, but it's the most hardest. I don't even know how I did it. It's the hardest path on this earth to walk to be a person in your first year of recovery.
Yeah, it is. Very difficult.
So thank you for letting me be here. It was a wonderful experience.
Yeah, man, it was. It's fun. I get a lot of juice doing this. This is another place where I get into this flow thing where I feel like I've spoke a couple times that I feel, I know I'm right where I'm supposed to be doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And that is like, I've been looking for that all my life, for those feelings, and that's what puts that chill in my core.
Can I say one other thing about that, Dan? Is that when you get in tune and you get your spirituality going, and you know, it's normal to go home and criticize your own talk, right? You're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have said that. And especially that one outburst I had where I was like, whoa! And today, instead, the attitude I look at is, well, you know what? This is supposed to be a service, so maybe God had a reason that there's somebody out there who's going to be touched by that one moment, and he wouldn't have been touched by anything else I said. Yep. Even if it makes him angry, right? It makes him touched to maybe look at something. So there's a purpose, and it is what it is. We say what we say on our talks. Don't ever go back and second guess yourself.
Yeah, and that's been another gift, and you know, probably another gift of recovery is that, you know, these podcasts, I'm okay with them coming off just the way they come off. You know, I don't worry about it. I do get some feedback from guests once in a while about their critiquing their talk. I don't worry about it. You know, would you, if we sat around and had a conversation, would you go home and mull over what we said? Mm-mm. No, but because you get to put playback on this, then
and it's so uncomfortable hearing your own voice. I don't know if you're over that yet, but boy, every time I listen to myself, I'm like, God, I hate this guy.
There's something to me that's just gone from it, you know, and I can certainly listen to it and critique myself, but I don't, you know. It's like kind of like the obsession to drink or whatever being removed. The obsession to worry about what I sound like here has been removed, and I just don't worry about it. People come on and they talk about how many ums and ahs, and I do that too, and I stop and I stutter and I use the wrong word once in a while, and so fucking what, right?
It's authentic.
Yeah, this is me. That's what, when I first sat down to start doing this, I had to give up that whole thing of doing anything that was not me, right? That this was going to be some highly produced, or this was going to be, you know, something that I was going to force into some spot, some square peg into a round hole kind of thing. Quickly that I was like, okay, this is just going to be what it's going to be. We're going to sit down and talk, and when the air compressor kicks on in the middle of it, that's what happens, man. If somebody has to get up and pee, or somebody comes into the room late, or Bruno comes and knocks on the door because he's wanting to know what we're doing in here, that's just what you're going to get.
And everybody has an opinion trying to steer you in that direction of, oh, you need to polish this up. You need to. We had a lady come to our group last week who was doing that. And I'm like, you know what? God's got a hand in this. And if we trust him, it'll probably turn out okay. So we don't have to manage the fuck out of this.
Yeah, man, what an easy way to live that way. You know, we were saying something earlier about that. And I don't remember where we were at. But, you know, just being able to just kind of go with this flow of life thing and allow that to play out rather than this kind of like having a tight grip on everything all the time. You know, where my freaking arms are hurting because I've got a grip on everything that's going on around me, trying to manage it and force it into the direction I think it ought to go. Don't have to do that anymore. Well, man, it has been a blast once again. I know that one thing we're going to have some more conversations because I want to talk about some other things, and we want to have some more things where we're talking about, and you know, you're talking about, you know, starting up a YouTube channel to complement the TSSR. So we'll be like using we'll cross-pollinate some more and see how many people we can reach with this thing, and touch other souls, and hopefully bring them to a place that we found. That's really what I want.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
me too.
I've been given a gift now, and it's a really good gift, and now I want to share it.
Me too. That glow in your eyes, that just juice feeling you have most of the time, it's available, and that's all I care about is giving it to everybody else.
Yep, same here, man. spiritualunderground.org, dtmww.net. Go out to 12stepspiritualrecovery.com, and go to Amazon, 12-Step Spiritual Recovery, James Christopher Cone. If you have any problems finding that stuff, find one of those websites and contact me. I'm a really available person. I will help you find this stuff. If there's any other way I can help you with any kind of recovery issues, feel free to reach out. Welcome feedback. The music around this thing today will be brought to you by Darren Frank. I haven't picked out a song yet, but I think I'm going to delve a little bit more into the archives. He's provided me with some acoustic stuff that I'm using here lately. So, as always, thank you all for allowing me to participate in my recovery in this manner today. Love you all. Peace out.
Peace out.
My hands are shaking as I say this prayer. I don't know where to start. My heart is breaking as I struggle for air. Send me someone to show me the way and heal my heart. Free my soul with your love. Make me whole. Just a touch of your hand takes me back where I began. In your arms all is right. That's when I start to see the light, and you heal my heart. My breath is shallow and my heart beats low. I'm living in my prayer. If I allow the love inside me to grow, surrounded by grace, you lead me there and heal my heart. Free my soul with your love. Make me whole. Just a touch of your hand takes me back where I began. In your arms all is right. That's when I start to see the light, and you heal my heart. Heal my heart, free my soul with your love. Make me whole. Just a touch of your hand takes me back where I began. In your arms all is right. That's when I start to see the light, and you hear